Yes. Okay. Now we need to. Yeah, okay, it's working here as well. Okay, I think we are live and I think we're connected. So we'll get started, inshallah.
Yeah, bismillah. Send the link.
Yes, I'll send the link. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala tammal al-akmalan. على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وأن معهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Welcome to today's podcast. Last time was a pilot, so this is officially the first podcast.
The first cab of the rank, okay.
And alhamdulillah, we have our dear brother Ismail David, who's been quite active in the local community for many years. So it's a pleasure to be hosted by him at his house. And we will be talking about 3 topics today. We'll be talking about local zakat, the disruptions caused to Muslims going to Hajj from Australia and the systems that are in play, and some resource shortages that we have in our local community. Before we begin, I want to sort of set the intention or why we're sort of doing this. So I sort of thought about it and I thought of 3 particular intentions. So the first one is that Ramadan is coming up. So we're less than a month out and many Muslims will be considering which charities to give their donations to, especially the zakat. And so my intention here is to do a series of podcasts where I interview leadership from the different charities, especially the larger ones, and basically getting an idea from them in terms of what makes them different and some of the questions that people may have. The other aspect of it is that we need to educate donors. A lot of people, they sort of outsource the problem, they throw their money over some website and they sort of see that's the end of it. They don't really care what happens, the impact it has or it doesn't have. And I guess the last part is that there's a lot of conversations that happen in the community, and very rarely do we have an opportunity to speak directly and get it from the horse's mouth. So this would also set the record straight on a few things that people have said to me anonymously, and some of those things as well. So welcome, Brother Ismail,
Jazakallah khair for having me
to the show. And what we'll start off with is just some rapid questions, so that we can sort of get more people onto the live stream, and then we can sort of go from there.
Do I get $1 million for each question?
No, unfortunately. So for anyone watching on Instagram, this will be obviously made available on YouTube as well. So if you want to double speed this or skim through as well, I'll put some timestamps to the questions as well. So let's get started with the rapid questions. First one, Salafi or Sufi?
Both.
Okay. This one's going to be a bit difficult to say both to. Hizbi, Ikhwani or Tablighi?
All of them. As a community in the work we do, we try not to differentiate with these because these are fiqh matters, and I think as a community and as an ummah we should really lift ourselves above that to be able to make progress. So
Okay.
for us as an organization or as an individual, we just try not to actually label people in what camp they fall in.
Okay, cool. So we're going to unpack some of these. So we'll go through them rapidly and then we'll go through them in detail, inshallah. The next one is madhabi or Ahlul Hadith.
Both.
Okay. Zakat should be local or global?
It's not a question of local or global, it's a question of fiqh. So local to start with.
Yep.
And we can help global as well.
Okay, perfect. Next one is, should we or shouldn't we vote in state and federal elections?
So from a fiqh point of view or personal point of view?
Would those two things not be the same thing?
Not necessarily, because it's like, I say vote for as a person, and then we can go into unpack, the reasons why, and I give you some examples as to why it's important whether you want to vote or don't vote, but get involved.
Okay, perfect. Hand slaughtered or machine slaughtered?
Both.
Okay.
I'm not saying both just because it's easy, just that's how I feel about it. So.
Yeah, just because again, we caught up I think a couple nights ago.
Yeah.
And I was explaining how we want this to be as casual and off the cuff as possible.
Yep.
And I know Brother Ismail for a few years, and I know what I respect about him is that he's very candid with his feedback. So he won't mince his words. So he's not saying both for the point of convenience or anything like that. Mawlid or no Mawlid?
Both.
Is Islamic finance legitimate or not?
For me, the jury's still out.
Okay. To vaccinate or not?
Yes.
Public schools or private schools?
Private.
Okay. And there's a section at the end, we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. Your favorite da'wah organization in the community?
In Australia or just in general?
Maybe in Australia, and if you've got a global one, that would be cool as well.
Favorite da'wah organization? I guess Mercy Mission.
Okay. That's your answer for local and global? Or?
Global, I guess Umar Sulaiman.
Yaqeen Institute?
Yaqeen Institute.
Okay, perfect. And lucky last for the rapid questions, your favorite charity other than your own? So if you had to donate, or who would you donate to other than NZF?
There's the other than NZF World or NZF Canada or any of those, just other than NZF?
No NZF.
Depends on the cause, I guess. Like just recently we donated Islamic Relief for the Turkey thing.
Yeah.
I personally did, so I would say Islamic Relief, I guess, in Australia.
Okay, perfect. So now we'll get into questions that we have a little bit more time to answer. So this is where we'll sort of go a little bit deeper. So some of these questions are generic questions which I'll seek to get answers from all charity heads. Some of these are specific to NZF. Some of them people have sent through normally through messages. Some of them have been anonymous. So we don't know who's asked these questions. But I've sort of put them and structured the common questions together just so there's a bit of a flow to the questions. So this first section is about zakat, specifically local zakat. So the first question is, with the devastation caused by the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, why should Australian Muslims keep their zakat local? We have the Muslims in Palestine, Kashmir, Somalia, the plight of the Rohingya, the Uyghur Muslims. So there's on the one hand, you have Muslims dying of hunger, thirst, extreme heat or cold. And then you've got Australia, which would be perceived on the apparent as people have it easy, people have Centrelink, people have other safety nets. So why would people send their zakat from here, keep it here as opposed to sharing it globally?
So firstly, let me start by just put a disclaimer that it's not an issue, and we as an organization or as an individual, myself, we try to avoid the them and us scenario.
Okay.
Our fundamental goal in Australia or NZF is to implement the pillar of zakah and educate people about zakah.
Okay.
Right? So it's like me arguing whether because the earthquake happened should we pray 6 rak'ahs now for dhuhr. It's a fiqh matter of salah.
Okay.
Right? So when it comes to zakah, it's a fiqh matter. It's not about charity, earthquakes. It's not about that. It's about what's the ruling on zakah.
Okay.
Okay. So the ruling on zakah is very simple. I'll give you an example. If we were praying now in the masjid, and after the salah, we pick up a wallet, right? And in the wallet, there's $2,000, but there's no ID or whatever. So we hand it over to one of the brothers who runs the masjid, and he looks at it, $2,000, a lot of money.
Mm.
So what do you think generally they would do with it? They probably won't pocket it, or they'll keep it because they would assume the person is coming back for their wallet.
Mm.
But now there's a charity they're collecting for a cause, right? And it's a good cause. So do you think that the brother would give that $2,000 to the charity? It's a very good cause,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh,
Generally,
that money from the
from
wallet?
the wallet. Will he give it to him?
No, because it's not his to...
It's not his to give, right?
Yeah.
So then he knows that brother's coming back. So then a week goes by, brother's not coming back. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks go by. He hasn't come back yet. The charity guys are back here. The cause is even worse now,
Mm-hmm.
right? So do you think he'll give it to them?
No, not yet.
Not yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Why isn't he giving to them? What in his
Because
mind stops him from giving him the money? Because it belongs to somebody else.
Yes.
All right. So similarly, even if he gave it to them, and then the next day the brother comes for his wallet, what's his role now?
He's responsible to give it back.
Give it back to him,
Give it
unless
back
the
to
brother says, look, okay, good khair, but he needs to give the money back to him. So he understands that that money doesn't belong to him.
Okay.
It's not his right to give it wherever, no matter how dire need that other cause is. This money belongs to that person who lost it.
Okay.
Agree?
So I get the analogy.
Okay. So when it comes to zakah,
Yep.
right? The zakah of the person living in the local area, the zakah collected there, it is their right first.
Okay.
So it is almost like that wallet. So if they collected zakah and they gave it all away,
Mm-hmm.
and the person that walks in, that falls into one of these 8 categories,
Yep.
and they're definitely eligible for zakah, you've given their money away.
Mm-hmm.
You've given their money away. You, as an organization who's collected zakah, need to find the money because it belongs to them. So
Okay,
the first right of zakah is not about who's poorer or who's needier, it's whose right it is. So it is the right of the person where the money was collected first.
Okay. So on what basis are you restricting it geographically? Like, as in your preference? Is that a preference? Is that a requirement? Are the other charities wrong in sending zakat overseas? How do we navigate that?
So we never say charities or people are wrong, because you can't just make a rule and say people are wrong to do
Yep.
things. There's preferred ways, there's agreed ways, and there's acceptable ways, and then there's definitely things that are incorrect.
Yep.
So nobody's doing anything that's wrong or haram, or so to speak.
Yep.
But there's the preferred way. So what we as an organization say, alhamdulillah, we are here to care for the local, and we don't want to have this them and us scenario. We should be able to do both. Right?
Yeah.
But the strongest, so if you go back to the fiqh of zakah,
Yeah.
if you go into the hadith of Prophet ﷺ sending Mu'adh ibn Jabal to Yemen,
Yeah.
right? So Prophet ﷺ sends Mu'adh ibn to Yemen, and he says to him, I'm sending it to the people of the book. So he's sending him to non-Muslims, to Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gives, everybody knows the hadith. So the part that we talk about is where he says, and take from their rich and give to their poor,
Mhm.
right? So this is where the Madhab agrees, first and foremost, it is given to the local, where it was
Okay.
collected. And then it comes where Mu'adh, in the time, so Prophet ﷺ was there, Prophet ﷺ passed away, Abu Bakr took over, and then Umar took over.
Mm-hmm.
So you take about a period of about 3 to 4 years. Mu'adh then sends, so we don't know exactly what year in Umar's reign. So let's say in the 4th year, as an example. So that's
Mhm.
about 7 years. So Mu'adh then sends part of his zakah back to Medina. Umar summons him and says, why have you done that? So this is in itself teaches you, the Khalif saying to him, why did you send the money back here? You're supposed to distribute it in Yemen.
Mm-hmm.
He says, no, I fulfilled my rights in Yemen, and this is the extra money. The following year, Mu'adh sends half the zakah back, and then the following year he sends all the zakah back. So this is where we take the rulings from, and the understanding and the way we work is that if we use that particular scenario and we build our community to a point where we become so self-sufficient and stuff, just imagine what we could do to how we could help people overseas. But because the zakah is not implemented anywhere like this, if everybody implemented it this way, nobody needs to send money anywhere, because people would be able to do this, right? And obviously we can then send much more overseas. But in the meantime, while the charities are doing fantastic work and required overseas, we're not disputing for people not to send it. But it's not a zakah matter. The issue of sending money to Turkey and sending money local is not a zakah matter. It's a charity and Muslim duty. Now you can use zakah to help certain aspects of that, of the Turkish earthquake, as an example. You can't use zakah money for all of that, by the way.
Sure. Yep.
Right. So there's categories of zakah.
So I think like just to sort of, because there's some people that may be listening to this and they don't necessarily know all the rulings of zakat, etc. I think what we're referring to here is that if you open up the books of Islamic rulings, the 4 schools of thought will agree upon the fact that there's a preference for zakat to be local based on the evidence that brother Ismail mentioned of the hadith of Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiyallahu anhu. And I guess the question then is that to what extent is this a question of preference versus dire need, obviously. So I'll give you a quick example. So like say for example the schools, they mention that it's preferred to give it locally, but a lot of the books they'll say that okay, but if famine breaks out or something happens outside that area, we'll talk about defining local as well, then the preference shifts immediately from the local need to a global need. So like how do we navigate that? So this like as in if the reference points are the schools of thoughts, and the schools of thoughts are saying okay, in certain situations we go away from the local for the global, for the based off just what I mentioned, the fact that there's people literally starving to death, etc. How do we then sort of think through that?
So if you look at that rulings, the preference is to help more in the international, right? What happens?
Yep.
But remember these 8 categories or the 7 there, forgetting Amil and Alay for a moment.
Yep.
Right? They're still there. They're still local. The people, the debtor or the even Sabil or the poor and needy, you still have them in Australia. So if all the money goes out, what about their right? So there has to be a mechanism.
Would the advice then be to divide your zakat? Give some, because I've heard some scholars say this, where divide your zakat, give some locally, so you tick that box, and then give some internationally. So are we thinking all or nothing, like it's all local?
For us, it's never all or nothing.
Okay.
We don't work like that. Our either is not about all or nothing. Our either is about how we can benefit the community in the best way possible. We don't work about let's have $25-30 million. It's not about money.
Okay.
Even though zakah is about money, it's about understanding the fiqh of the zakah, understanding the benefits of the zakah, and there'll always be a need. Why is this a pillar? There's a third pillar of our deen, which means you can never say that it will never be needed in any part of the world.
Right. Okay.
Right? Because it's a pillar, it's designed to be there. There will always be people in one of these categories somewhere in the world, wherever you are. So the right of that person needs to be fulfilled. So as an organization, we say to the people, look, it's great, we need to help our brothers, but you need to understand, and if you come and see them, like I wouldn't do this if I didn't see every single day the people in need. Like yesterday I did a talk and the sister said, look, they're Centrelink, and then I thought we were past that for the last 10 years. I don't even actually answer that question anymore, right?
But let's just say someone says, okay, the random person that's asking for zakat, they're Centrelink. What do you say to that?
So you ask the person, so an example yesterday I said do you think there's need for local zakat?
Mm-hmm.
And 2 people said no. So I said, okay, hold your hand up. So tell me which are the 8 categories of zakat distribution. Who's the 8 recipients? They couldn't tell me. I said, so how are you able to say something's not needed when you don't know who's supposed to get it? Right?
Okay,
if you don't know who's supposed to get it, you can't say it's not needed.
Okay, so I guess like let's just say that there's someone that needs it locally. What do you define as local?
So for us, local is basically Australia.
Okay.
For the timing. So you could argue local whether it's by distance or by this country. So come to the moon. We'll talk about the moon stuff as well. So like people that define local moon don't believe in local zakah as an example, right? So local zakah or local moon, they would say anywhere in Australia. So if you find it by the country versus or either the geography. An example, if you go by geography, then New Zealand is closer than Perth, right? And that means if they see the moon in Perth, in New Zealand versus Perth, they should accept it, right? So similarly, what we do is, for the time being, to make it easy, we define local as Australia, right? When the Christchurch thing happened, we got a ruling that we say we can help Christchurch basically because if you look at it geographically, they're closer than Perth, and then we gave some help there as well. But now we are based in New Zealand as well. So
yeah, so I was going to come to that. So like, let's take those 2 examples of local. We'll go into maybe a little bit more detail. So let's just say, for example, like I open up a book. So before doing this, we revise and stuff as Ramadan comes close as well. So for example, and I'm talking from a Hanbali perspective. I know there's different views out there. But the books will say explicitly, okay, local is defined as a distance of the shorting and combining of prayers, which according to a lot of scholars will be about 80 kilometers.
Yeah.
So for me, if I'm following that particular school of thought, it's telling me, okay, the preference is local. I would need to sort of guarantee almost that, okay, if I'm living in Sydney, my zakat is going to Perth.
Yep.
Because there'd be no difference between it going to Perth and, say, Indonesia. So how do we reconcile those things? And like, I think as well, like with one thing with like the local siding thing, I know some scholars like in our madhab, for example, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, he'll define local as well. So for moon siding, it's a different distance. I think it's about 600 or 700 kilometers or something like that. So my point is that how do we navigate all these different views? Because I think this is one of the biggest questions that I've gotten. Like, it's just asked in different ways. But if I was to come to the root of the issue, it's that who in NZF determines, out of the array of different opinions, who determines, okay, we're going to take this view and we're going to leave this view?
So the way it's structured, so from a local point of view,
yep.
for the ease of the implementation and to take that local to a practical application,
okay.
It was the scholars that set up NZF agreed that it will be by country, so to speak. So we had the UK, Canada, Australia, Netherlands, Switzerland, and New Zealand. All right. Now the only country in the world, by the way, that does it closer to that of the Hanbali madhab and the Shafi, by the way, so it's Malaysia. So in Malaysia, they take local to the state of Selangor, the state of Kuala Lumpur. So you can't, if you're from Kuala Lumpur, you can't actually get zakah in Selangor.
Okay.
Right? So
sense.
they're the only ones who's taken it really down to very, very strict local
Has
areas.
NZF UK done it by boroughs, like what would be our equivalent of LGS?
They've tried. So for instance, it can become very practical or impractical. So they have tried to say, okay, like some people like even say to us, look, is it okay if I give you my zakah, but I would like you to distribute it in WA or in Adelaide? And we say, yes, we can facilitate that. That's very easy for us to do. But from a practical sense and implementation point of view, we've defined local as Australia.
Okay, gotcha. So the bigger question is, so do you have more details in terms of like who were the scholars that determined these boundaries, or how they determined it, or like what methodology? Like, let's just say with the Christchurch example, like what framework are those are the people operating in for them to then say, okay, for all these years we've been doing Australia, but now let's do New Zealand because of this one incident.
So
like how does that?
The New Zealand one incident was basically where, and as you said there, when there's a special, like for instance for Turkey, for example now New Zealand, you could say, look, if we had surplus of money, should we take some of our money and give it to Turkey as an example?
Okay.
Right. So that's where that particular thing comes from. But then at the same time, you have an issue of you've told people you're collecting money for local, so you can't just in the middle of somewhere just decide that you want to do something else with it. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know exactly who was I can't remember all the sheikhs, and I know our board is Sheikh Shajid, Sheikh Bilal Ismail, Sheikh Allah Sayed, Sheikh Tawfiq. And then they have in the UK, they have quite a few other, predominantly from different madhabs as well. You know, Hanafi very strong. We seek the opinions from here as well. Now actually we are using a lot of the imams within Australia, like within the annex space, with the mufti, to try and make sure that, you know, we try to become more precise in the definitions of these things.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, example, now we have a meeting with the Fatwa board of ANIC in this on Monday to talk about what is the cost of Zakat al-Fitr and Fidya this year.
Okay.
Because of the cost of living and all of that. So over the years, alhamdulillah, our education and the implementation of the pillar of zakah is becoming really, really sort of, you know, next level, so to speak. So once again, when you talk about the fiqh of zakah versus crisis versus charity, you know, it is not a zakah matter. That's what I like to say. It's not an issue of zakah. Not why do people always say something happened? Okay, why do I need to give my zakah here? Right? It's zakah is rulings in fiqh, but not every crisis means that now suddenly all our zakah needs to go there. That's why the sadaqah, the generosity of stuff is so powerful in the deen. Zakah should be, okay, we can't say don't send your zakah, be it timing, good timing, send your zakah, whatever. Yes, that's fine to do. But understand that you can't just send all your zakah to anybody. So for instance, people send zakah to non-Muslim organizations because they're helping in a specific crisis, as an example, right? So the zakah must go to technically, fiqh-wise, all of them will agree zakat must go to a person, right? The issue of tamlik, it must go to a person.
Yep.
Right. And then it's obviously now how do they implement? Do we feed the whole village? Do we rebuild an entire city with the zakat money? All of those sorts of things all comes into those rulings. So, but we don't actually get into disputes or arguments or just debate on what charities are doing with money, because I don't think it's healthy. I think it's healthier for us to just agree that we are the guys that takes care of our local, and local can be Australia, is Australia, and the rest, let's support you to take care of the ummah, because we'll all be asked in the day of judgment, what have we done for the ummah? Khalas, there's brothers, sisters, many charities dealing with the ummah, we're dealing with the local, we cover off their responsibility for the local, and they cover off our responsibility for international. That's how we look at it.
Okay. Like what we might do is, we might move away from the ruling side of things, we'll come back to it in a second, just to change gears a little bit. Can you give me like a concrete example of where someone's come and they're in need, and they like, because I think some people may not be aware of the fact that some people fall through the cracks. So
let's start with the poor, right? So the poor and the needy, Allah separates poor and needy for a specific reason, right? Because poor is easy. Poor, we can't compete with the poor overseas. We can't compete with that. You can't compete with the poor person in Africa or the current crisis we have there. So the poor means a person just doesn't have enough food, right? So we have like real examples of schools where we can actually, the school would call us and show us the family, the child has no lunch or hasn't had breakfast. We will then go to the family's house and then see that they actually don't have any food. Now people might argue that's not possible. Impossible in Australia.
Okay, yeah.
There's Centrelink. So, okay, what people don't understand is that they always assume somebody else is caring for somebody and Centrelink's there for everybody. Right?
So what are examples of people that don't have access to Centrelink, for example?
There are many single moms. There are so many sisters on spousal visas that's been abandoned that have no access to not even Medicare. So we're dealing with a sister right now today that is coming out of a domestic violence relationship. She's here on a spouse visa. She's just been here for 3 months. She's got no access to nothing, right? So then the refugees, there's the international students. There are a lot of students that, I won't go into that issue, but they come here and they don't have the money that they're meant to have, right? And then there are just people who are not eligible for Centrelink. There's so many, but Centrelink is only a small piece of this. The ones who are eligible for Centrelink, right? Then you ask the person who says there's Centrelink, okay, how much is Centrelink, right? How much is it, right? So most people don't even know how much is Centrelink. So when we go through their financial assessment, you'll see that the rent alone, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, right? People think it's cheap in Perth. The rent is just as high as Sydney at the moment. Queensland is probably just a little bit below. The rent alone is not enough. The Centrelink is not enough just for the rent.
Right.
So a person is already negative from food perspective, petrol, car, whatever. So Centrelink, if Centrelink wasn't there, we won't have enough money at all. Our money will be chewed up in 2 months if Centrelink wasn't there. So that's for this category. The needy category, I'll give you an example. Brother walks into the office last week. He calls up. He's been trying to get hold of us. I don't know how he managed. He then calls up our Ziki store in Liverpool. Says, I need to speak to somebody. He gets to me. He says, I need to just talk to you, brother. Look, I've just been made redundant 2 weeks ago. I've got a job lined up in March, right? But I'm only starting the 1st of March and I only get paid like 14th of March. Right now, I have no money. You know how most people live from paycheck to paycheck. So he's got no job. He's got another job, but this piece here, he's got nothing. He says, I said, okay, can you meet me in the Lakemba office? He said, brother, I don't have enough petrol in my car or money to get you to get to Lakemba. So anyway, I met him in Liverpool, and that's sort of a good example of a needy person where you might not tell this person, you might not know that this person needs help. So he needed help so we gave him some money for 2 months to get him back on his feet. Haven't seen him again, right? In the time of Umar al-Khattab, he said, give a person enough for a whole year, right? If you can. Let them go away and build their life, what they used to, right? So we don't have the capacity to do that. We love to have the capacity to do that.
So this actually is a good segue into one of the questions I was going to ask you later. But because we're already talking about it, it might just make sense to ask it now. So how does NZF determine someone is eligible for zakat? Like what policies are in place to prevent favoritism or bias from the caseworkers, or all these other things? Like, do you personally get involved? Do the caseworkers deal with it? How do they determine, so if someone comes through the door, how do they know that this person is a zakat eligible recipient?
So the way we work is we try to make sure a couple of things doesn't happen. No favoritism, no nepotism, no conflict of interest. So we have policies and stuff around those things. An example, if you know the person by personally or through family, you're not allowed to work on the case. If you are related or any other way or whatever, you're not allowed to work on those cases. And how do we enforce that? So our policy and our process is first in, first out.
Okay.
Right. So every morning we have a meeting, and all of the people that's applied, like, so the ones, let's just an example for tomorrow. So there'll be, like, say 100 cases on the queue that's applied.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll just go through, take out any priority ones. Priority one is somebody's homeless, somebody needs food right now, somebody's in a dire straits, somebody needs to be buried. So there's a couple of categories for us.
Okay.
Priority
So like
one. Exceptional.
Yeah.
We'll deal with those straight away. Now let's say there's 80 cases left on the queue, right? The caseworkers are not even allowed to select a case. The cases are automatically allocated in order to the next caseworker. So if you're ready to take a case, round robin,
yeah.
the caseworkers are ready to accept the case, you press assign case, it will take the next case off the queue to you. So you won't know which case you're going to get. So then it's my turn, then it's your turn, etc., etc. So that's how the cases are assigned.
So say it comes to me,
Mm-hmm.
how do I, if I know the person, do I mandatorily have to tell?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a ruling. So so let's say the case comes to you,
Yeah.
and you know the person. You then have to tell the team lead, I know this person, etc., etc. The team lead then looks at the case, discuss it with us if needed, and then let's say it's a very sensitive case. It's a well-known person in the community, so we take care of all of these things. And then we say, okay, who is this case best assigned to? Okay, for confidentiality, etc., etc. So you might know the person, I might also know the person.
Okay. Yeah.
So the team lead will say, okay, they might talk to the national manager, and then they'll assign the case accordingly. Sometimes some of those really sensitive cases, the national manager deals with it. As a matter of fact, to some degree, sometimes a case will just rename the name of the case.
Okay.
Right, and give it a pseudo, just so that if by chance somebody is on our CRM and they pick it up. So we spend a lot of time with confidentiality, due diligence. All of that is very, very important. It takes a little bit longer, but we also do auditing each month for somebody to go back and just double check that all of these things have been met.
Okay.
And if they haven't,
say there's someone that's in need, what's the timeline between application and conclusion of case?
So each time we work, like our best scenario we had was a 3-day turnaround. We were able to do turnaround in 3 days. But as the cases build up, obviously, it's like opening the tap wider, and we can't just throw more people at it. So we need to refine our processes. So at this point in time, the priority one cases, 24 hours or straight same day.
Yep.
The other cases at this stage, as of Friday, 2 to 3 weeks, because of the number of cases we have.
Okay.
To give an example, we're working now with the UK, and we're talking about now local again, just to go back to that scenario. And I'm not exaggerating this. The UK has 1,500 cases a month. They have a backlog of 6,000 cases. Because they just can't churn them through, right?
Yep. So they're like about 4 months behind.
4 months behind. But we're working now on a process of how we can assist them just to get those things through. For us, it's about customer service. We don't work on what's easy for us, convenient for us. What is it for the customer? How convenient is it for the customer? How easy is it for the client? Because zakah is not only about money. It's about dawah, it's about the love of the deen, it's about creating that person understanding my religion is actually helping me. So sometimes the person doesn't need money straight away. They just need somebody to talk to them. They just need to say, somebody's acknowledged me, somebody's acknowledged my problem. So we spend a lot of time in that as well. As a matter of fact, our turnaround time from the time somebody applies to the time we talk to the person for the first time is less than 24 hours.
Okay,
but then we don't actually help that. In that first what we call intake, which means we say to you, Shabazz, okay, we received your application, don't worry, we're going to take care of you. It will be a couple of days, and you might say, no, I need it right now. And then that person will like try to assess, we may have missed the fact that you're priority one.
Okay. And
then we escalate it straight away.
Like, I think we'll touch upon this a little bit more detail as well, that I think people need to realize as well that zakat and sadaqah are two different things.
100%.
Zakat has a lot of rulings. And when it comes to zakat, the scholars will also mention that if you give the zakat to the wrong person, then the zakat may not be, the obligation of zakat may not be lifted. So like, do you ever get cases or applicants of zakat that are mistaken? Like as in they're trying to cheat the system or anything like that? Like obviously you got people cheating Centrelink, so by extension people will try to cheat this as well. So how does that work?
We do get that, and alhamdulillah over the years we've become really more efficient at that. We don't say that we'll catch everybody.
Yep.
If you think about it this way, if a person is ready to cheat zakah, or basically take zakah without having the right to it, they'll do anything.
Yep.
They'll basically have...
So do you have people like forging documents, faking
We picked those up. We've
or...
had, in all honesty, in the 10 years, forging of documents, there was only one incident.
Okay.
That I know from the cases, and we alhamdulillah we managed to pick it up, and that was like you just go like, are people actually real? So that means when they get to a point where they say I'm going to cheat NZF, I'm going to cheat whatever charity for zakah, then basically they have no fear of Allah, they have no fear of anything. So we have very few of those, but then we have others that don't understand what zakah means, the implications of taking zakah. And the part of our goal is to say, brother, sister, look, this is zakah money. You're not eligible. So when we say, sometimes people apply and then they're not providing us with the evidence for us to determine their zakah eligibility. We're not saying they're not zakah eligible, but we're unable to determine your zakah eligibility, so we can't help you.
Okay.
Then they get upset with us. Say, look, we have an amana with this. Right? And people say, you're just like Centrelink. No, we're not just like Centrelink. We are, the way we deal, the way we ask for things, because we have to assess whether you're eligible. As you said, the amana is there. So for the donors, they would like to know that the money's gone to the right place. So one of the things, let's say we made a mistake, or afterward you find out. So what we've done, what we do actually is, if we find out that 100% we confirm that we got scammed, so to speak, then we take sadaqah money to push it back into the zakah, we replace the money. Okay. We then red flag those people. But now let's say we didn't make a mistake, but in the end it turned out that the person really whatever they said, let's say it wasn't true 100%. The sheikh said to us, look, you do what's apparent to you at the time. Whatever's apparent to you at the time, it looked legit, whatever, then alhamdulillah, that person takes responsibility for lying to you.
That's right.
But we need to take enough process in place to make sure we're not willy-nilly about it.
So you're not, application comes in, here's the money.
No.
You're not conveying.
There's no AI in our system, artificial intelligence, there's no automation of things.
Okay.
There has to be human element in every single application.
Yeah, because I know that like in our books, when that point is mentioned, there's always the exception, which is a rich person failing to be poor. If they were to deceive you, then it still counts because it's on them, like you said. Yeah.
So just that on the needy category, right? The Prophet ﷺ says there are two characteristics of a needy person, right? And you say, oh great, because as NZF will be able to find them, right? The characteristics is, one, you will not be able to tell they're needy, and two, they won't ask. So how are you going to find them? So for us, that particular description of that hadith is like this brother who came. He didn't look needy, but he asked. Then there are some who don't look needy, they won't ask, but people will tell us about them. So the fact that somebody's told us, and when you meet them, you find that they won't tell you and they won't ask, it already tells us that they're needy, because the Prophet ﷺ already gave us a description of them. Right? So that's actually a guidelines for us to show, okay, that's one step, that this person is actually needy because they fit those two characteristics.
So what case comes in, someone says that they form one of the first two categories. How do you determine their poverty, the degree of poverty? Do you go through bank statements? What do you actually do?
Yeah, so we do all of that. But at the same time, so for instance, we do bank statements, we do IDs, we do visas, we do, like let's say somebody comes in, they say they really in need of food, whatever. So it's not necessarily the bank statement is not the key to it. Like they might have zero in their bank account, they might have $100, $200. It is like, how did they get to this point? The whole story around it can tell you a lot, right? And then there's a lot of people that from the bank statement, you suddenly see they might fall year, but in the bank statement, they're sending money overseas, right? So what happens is a lot of the people that's here needs to take care of brothers and sisters, parents overseas. Okay. So that becomes a dilemma for us.
So these are like the international students that are doing Uber.
Not only that, like I have a case. The brother's resident is working everything, so he just came as the needy category. He needs an operation, urgent operation, right? Without giving too much away. So he said, can NZF help? He said, look, make an application, let's have a look, what's the situation? He said, look, the problem is most of my money I sent back to take care of my mum and dad, right? So, well, that creates a dilemma from a Zakat perspective. It doesn't mean you don't need help, brother. So as we were going through the process, so just yesterday, he had to go to hospital. So he submitted his papers for public hospital. They said, you're going to wait a year.
Okay, so he's on the waiting list.
He's on the waiting list.
Okay.
But yesterday, he texted me from hospital.
Oh, that's fine.
Because he ended up in emergency.
Oh, okay.
Right? He ended up in emergency. They operated on him. He's got all done without nothing, no cost to nobody.
Oh,
look at the beauty of this, right? The brother understands. He said, look, brother, I need to, because it's an existing case, previous case of ours, that, you know, with the Zakat, I know I'm sending the money overseas. I've got no option. My mom and dad is dependent on me, all of that. So I'm just going to live with this. I'm going to do this. But Allah has given him a way out because of his, I feel it's because of his sincerity and honesty. He said, okay, can you give me a loan? Can somebody give me a loan to do that? So when we do the assessment of the bank statement, it's just not carte blanche about, you know, you got a lot of money, you got no money. It's where you're sending money to, how you're spending your money. So people might spend money on all sorts of things, and you realize that, okay, this person actually needs some budget help.
Yep, that was actually going to be one of the next questions.
Yeah. So we do provide that as a service as well.
Like, what efforts are made to ensure people don't become dependent on zakat? Like, is there financial literacy workshops?
100%. So,
like, what type of lifestyle? Like, if people are living beyond their means, as it is there some like discretion to sort of withhold from them to get them to act like fall in line?
So this is a hard one, because how do you tell somebody that you live beyond your means, right? It's like basically criticizing somebody for driving a nice car or buying an expensive shirt or whatever. That you can't just say you live beyond your means, because by your standard, what gives you the right to say you're living beyond your means by what standard, right? Okay, so it's more like the very obvious things. So let's say somebody's struggling they have food on the table, their bank account is, but they've got a $500 mobile phone plan, right? Or they've got Netflix two gym memberships, etc., etc. Now, and then we try to talk to them about their lifestyle and in a very professional manner about how we can help them get there. But at the same time, they're already in a problem.
Yep.
Right. So there's two parts to this. One, we can't judge them for being here. They need help now. So you say, okay, let's get you out of this hole and make sure you don't fall in the hole again. So then we provide them with that service. This is where the issue of tamliq comes in for the person. So the person says, I'm behind in my rent. I need to pay the rent. So here's your rent money. Person goes away, comes back next month. Same scenario with the rent, right? So what happened was the rent money you gave them, they spent it on something else because it's their right. It's like they're giving the guy $2,000 back. He can do whatever he wants with it.
That's right. Yeah.
But now
there's a transfer of ownership.
Yeah, transfer of ownership.
Yeah.
But now, if you wanted to be wise and help the person as part of the holistic approach, we say, okay, shall we pay the rent to your real estate? So we need to get permission.
Okay, yep. So you're becoming an agent.
For that person, gotcha. But helping that person, not taking this money and spending it on something else to get them into worse property. So that's
do you guys ever do like food stamps or discounts to fast food places or anything like that?
We used to do fast food places, but one of the things we don't do is food boxes or food things, because this is hard work and it doesn't work in Australia. Because what happens is if the food boxes come, people open the box and they'll take out from the box what they want. So generally speaking, there's like 5%, 10% of the stuff left in the box. Okay. And every time we used to do that in early years, we used to see this. So what we did, we created our own voucher system, and we give the person a voucher, which they can shop whatever it is that they want.
Okay.
Right? So they basically redeem the voucher at some of the vendors we've set up.
Yep.
And they buy so all different nationalities eat different things.
Gotcha.
Right? Right? So that's why we find the benefit in that. So we give people vouchers. We had what we call a lunch voucher, which was basically go and buy a burger here or whatever. So for those people, we basically say, if somebody doesn't have lunch or whatever, that means they need money. They financial assistance, right? Say food. So then we give them money to go and buy the food they want.
So like just on the transfer of ownership, so like the obligation of zakat itself for the giver is only fulfilled when the person receives ownership of that thing. So there's a question here around when you go through like the financials of a lot of the charities on ACNC, you will notice that there's a lot of retained earnings or retained money. Now, when I speak to some charities, they say that's there in case there's an emergency, we can act quickly, etc. in the case of NZF, like, is this a problem? Like, is there too much zakat coming in and not enough going out? What's the timeline between, like, what's the flow, what's the cash flow like?
All right, so unfortunately, we don't have a problem with that, because what we do is, let's say we collect a certain amount during Ramadan after that point, so we have like a 12-month. The fiqh rule is that we have to get it dispersed within 12 months, money received. So money we get today has to be given within the next 12 months. So what we do is we have a budget that rolls every month. So we divide what we collect in Ramadan as our starting point across the 12 months, and each month we have a budget of a certain amount of zakat that needs to be distributed. If it's less, then it rolls over to the next month. If it's more, then meaning the next month has just slightly a little bit less. But we never had really a problem by being able to achieve this. So the money does roll. Now, coming back to where people see in the financials that there's extra money. So the financials is not really a good place to determine that particular scenario, because what happens is that a lot of charities may have a lot of sadaqah money, they have some investment money, they have some money that people gave as part of their wasiyah, as a waqf, right?
Endowment.
So endowment. So those monies will sit in the charities, right? And they'll always come up as surplus money based on the way the financials thing come up, right? Now for us, we have a financial year calculation, and then we have a Ramadan to move our things.
Yeah.
So sometimes it may be the money may look high based on where Ramadan is and where the financial year is.
Okay.
So it's not a good test for people. It's like to show that, okay, XYZ has 10 million sitting in their account as surplus. It is not a good indication of anything really. Okay.
So basically the idea would be that, because I know, like, some people may not realize this, that donating to a charity doesn't mean that it falls out of the bucket straight away. It's not like upon immediacy that.
So in the UK they try to do that, where people wanted to do all of
because
these things, right?
some scholars will suggest that the obligation is like ala al-fawd, like upon immediacy. But then the idea is that, I guess what you're saying is, the best guarantee you can give is within the next 12 months, whatever you've given has been flushed out.
Yes. So they were trying to do, like, basically as soon as you got, it'll tell you when your money is gone, right?
Yeah.
So I wish the Muslims would be excited about all other things as they're excited about this part, right? So like I said to people, like, they get excited and they want to know all of these things. It's like you go in a boxing ring and you're boxing with a guy. So the guy that you're fighting with in the boxing ring, basically he has a right to talk to you or later tell you how to box, or you're boxing good, whatever. But the guy in the audience is just sitting there in the background. He's got no right really to tell you how to box. He's not in the ring. So we say to the people who's so passionate about these things, come in the ring. Come and work with us.
Right.
Come and help the organizations, help the charities to do what you believe is so right. Because once you're in it, you realize it is not as simple as that. There's a lot of factors, moving parts to this, and everybody is trying their best to stick to the rule, because everybody, for that matter, that's in charity, I don't think anybody's in there not realizing that there'll be answer on the day of Qiyamah for this. Nobody's trying to cheat anybody. Nobody's trying to do anything bad, because we all know this is an amana. So having people on the keyboard warriors on the sideline just going, oh, what about this? What about this fiqh matter? What about this? What about that? This is like basically, let's fix the moon, guys.
Like
get yourself sorted on important matters. I'm not saying this is not important.
Right.
But there's some of these things that people really go on about.
Like I think where it's coming from. We'll come back to this actually. We'll park this because I want to go back to some other questions.
Okay, sure.
And we'll come back to the fiqh stuff just so that there's some variety for the people who are watching. Not everyone's interested in just those issues. So I guess, like, off the back of that, we know of situations where here or overseas people have misappropriated funds, even like sadaqah, zakat, etc. And like the trust is like one of the biggest things in the charity sphere. Like, what are your reasons why Muslims can trust NZF? Like, basically, I'll continue the question as it was asked. So for example, someone mentioned there was a case last year of an ex-employee who siphoned funds, and there's been allegations that, like, some of the retreats that happen that are interstate, etc., come from the sources of funds. So, like, how do you sort of navigate those sort of particulars, I guess? Like, how do Muslims know we can trust NZF?
No problem. So Muslims will trust based on evidence, right, and stuff.
Yeah.
So basically, trust is earned.
Okay.
Right. So one of the key things for me is, as the CEO or for the team, is to maintain the trust in ourselves, to make sure that we have put everything in place to the best of our ability to make sure that our amana is fulfilled, because we'll be answerable for that. It's a huge amana. I mean, it's a huge amana. We lose sleep over this stuff, right? You'll notice that we don't very seldom sponsor things.
We'll talk about this, yeah.
Yeah, it takes, for me to approve like some sponsor, it's like, because when you sponsor things, people look at like you're wasting their money. So what we do is, for example, this year with our 10th year, you'll see we've just gone one step further. We've gone to billboards, we've gone to buses, we've gone to different things, just but the people go, look how these guys are wasting money. So just so that people know, what we do internally when we do these exceptional things is, we would have money that came from nobody, so to speak.
Okay.
Right? So it wouldn't be 100% no zakat, 100%.
Yeah.
I can, put my life on that. When it comes to the sadaqah, we are just as cautious. So the sadaqah that's donated in relation to projects and programs, that money doesn't get touched for any marketing, for anything other than that, right? Then we have people who knows any organization can only run and be effective when they have good money, or when you get a car without petrol. Doesn't matter how fancy it is, how expensive it is, ain't going to go anywhere. And alhamdulillah, we have some good backers that says, okay, in order for you to run the car engine, we're happy to fund this or fund that. So we sometimes get funding, like for these billboards and stuff. We sometimes get somebody says, look, I'm happy to put some extra cash in for you guys to do that. When it comes to the outings, the staff things, once again, it comes down to even the staff. They say to me, let's go here, let's go. I say, guys, we need to be cautious, because perception, the image is very important, right? So for us to run an organization, like anybody who works in the corporate world or whatever, they fly people everywhere to go different places and motivate the staff to get a good organization going. I'm not saying we are at that level, but for us to keep our staff motivated, to keep them going, to have good staff, all of that, we need to have an environment, Islamic environment, where people feel, I'd like to work there.
Okay.
So similarly with the other money, so sometimes we apply for grants. So when we have grants, or we have some of these apprentice type stuff, so we have some money coming in from the government that gives us, like, so we've got a volunteer grant as an example. So we park all of this money that we use for all of these ancillary things that we don't want to use people's actual zakahs, that we don't even talk about that, for things that people can question us on, or say, like, you guys are wasting our money, so to speak. Because I personally don't want to waste the money. So even in our board, we have some people, like, they're very, very strict, very conservative. Like, even just to buy, like very few things, like, they'll approve, because they say, oh, it's not going to look good. But for us to grow and to take this, to leave a generation, to leave a legacy, we really need to build an organization where people say, I want to go and work there. And it has to be a place, a foundation, where there's employment, there's growth, and there's caring for the community. So that's where we're looking at going as an organization. I mentioned this to a lot of people, that, like, if you want to think of, like, a charity's fee as pies, you can generate a much larger pie once you've got a particular subset for the petrol in the car to actually grow the pie. You can have a very small pie that goes 100% dollar for dollar. But just to sort of touch upon something that I mentioned, I know last year when the incident occurred, I approached you about it and we spoke about it. Do you mind sharing, if you're comfortable, like, what the board did about this incident, like what's changed in terms of what the incident was, how the reaction was, what you've done? So the incident was basically
because there's a lot of talk
so
and stuff.
There will be, and we were very transparent with that, and because it's still currently within with the police and stuff. So the specific things we can and can't say, but just generally speaking, the incident happened where basically one of the staff was able to basically siphon money from client distributions to their own account, so to speak. So that's in a nutshell what happened, right? Fortunately, our processes picked it up. So you could argue it should have picked it up earlier, later. It's just the way life is, right? Scams. I mean, so when you say somebody applying for zakat and they're happy to cheat the system, let alone somebody working in there and happy to cheat the system, you are dealing with people whose mindset or their hearts are completely different. And then you think, okay, how do you employ people like this? Man, it's like you just, that we still have staff. We're still doing counseling with some people, and we still need to resonate with just how to put this in the thing. So having said that, we've put in place like let's say they needed us to put up a gate, like say somebody broke into your house and they said no, look, they broke in because your gate is a bit flimsy. We put up a wall, right? So which means the process we put into place now is very draconian, so to speak. The auditing we're doing it ourselves to make sure that this doesn't happen, because this happened on my watch, right? It happened on my watch, and it is something that I take full responsibility for. But we have rectified it, alhamdulillah. And you can never say never, but we have put some really strong things in place that would avoid it and pick it up possibly. But somebody could find another way, as an example. But
so it's like an arms race, like cybersecurity or anything like
but
that.
But alhamdulillah, our things are very, very well organized now, so that it's almost impossible to do it without getting picked up.
So I guess just for the people asking that have donated to NZF, what ended up happening with those funds? Were they retrieved or?
So we're still working the process, but the funds that was misappropriated, we have replaced that funds, and we haven't replaced it from existing zakat or existing sadaqah. So we have not taken any donors' money to replenish the money that was misappropriated. We basically, I don't really want to say this, but just for the clarity. So basically, the board and had to put the money back.
Okay, so the board took personal responsibility 100%. From their own pockets.
When the first thing the first thing the board said, guys, this is our responsibility. And then the sheikh said, let's see who's real now. And he just basically made a ruling. Said, this is it. This is what you need to do.
Okay, and I think when I had that chat with you, and again, this is one of the objectives of the podcast is that people hear something, it gets spread across different Facebook groups and WhatsApp chains. And very rarely do you ever have the opportunity to go directly to the person and say okay, your organization was allegedly involved in this. What's the actual true story? What's your side of the story?
The funny thing is that when we talk to our people say, oh, why are you gonna tell people? It happens everywhere. It happened to us, and we didn't tell anybody. So one of the reasons.
Also, it's happened to other charities. Yeah.
Like, it's amazing. Even ACNC, when we spoke to them, they were like, guys, why don't you just not say anything, sort of a thing.
Okay, so you proactively chose to disclose it to your donors?
100%. Because one of our values is transparency. If we can't live to that value, and the other thing that I did was, because it's like, when you tell a lie, you have to keep on lying. Prophet Muslim doesn't lie. So what we didn't want was constantly having to find an explanation and a story. Just tell the truth. Yeah. So the truth, the truth is easy, right? But at the same time,
I think at the point in time it's a bit difficult to say, but in the long term it's obviously a lot.
But we worked our way through that, and the bottom line was that I did not want to be held ransom by anybody. So you know what happens? The staff knows, right? So you say, guys, we better keep this a secret. Nobody's know. But what's going to happen? The staff leaves, right? So what do you think that they'll do?
Yeah.
So they'll always hold you to ransom to basically speak. You'll always have this worry it's going to break somewhere. Somebody's going to tell somebody. You always have that. But besides that, it was just our duty to our donors to say, guys, this is what's happened, this is what we've done, this is what we put into place, and we can basically guarantee that it will not happen again. But you can't never give 100% guarantee of any of those sort of things. And we didn't take any of your extra money, we didn't take any of your sadaqah, we didn't take any money from anybody else to plug that hole.
And that was when I spoke to you about it, I was actually quite impressed by the fact that the sheikh and the board actually made the decision to go ahead with that and whatnot. So I think moving on to other questions of finances and stuff. So some people believe, we talked about this last night, that there should be 100% policies for donations. So if I give $1, the dollar should go to the recipient. Is this sustainable or even possible? And how does NZF offset admin costs? So I think you've mentioned a couple of examples, but if you were to say to me, okay, you're going to give me $100 in zakat, how many of those dollars are going to go to the 8 categories, or how many of that is going to go to admin? How do you answer that?
So the simple answer is the cheeky answer is that 100% of that is going to the 8 categories.
Okay, yes, I got you. And one of the categories being the people that work.
Yeah. So Abilina Leia is the third one, right? So if you think about it, Allah has designed this. And when Allah puts in the ayah specific things in a particular order, there's a reason for order, right? It doesn't mean like, so if we had to choose, let's say we get a committee together, we brainstorm these 8 categories and let's put them in order of priority, right? Where do you think people will put this one? Probably last, right? Generally speaking.
Yeah.
Allah puts it number 3. So basically what it's saying from the fiqh point of view or tafsir of this is that if you want to do this properly and the design of zakah to care for the poor and the needy specifically, pay people to do it.
So just for context, Brother Ismail was pointing to something, maybe I'll share it afterwards as well. It's the ayah from Surah At-Tawbah where it mentions the 8 categories of zakat. And the scholars are in agreement because it starts with the stylistic innama, it's restricted to just those 8 categories. So it's not, after the 8th, there's not a 9th or a 10th category. Unlike sadaqah, which can be given to
free. So we call this restricted money.
Yes.
So fuqara wa masakin wa amilin alayha. So amilin alayha, so the issue of those working in the zakah.
Yep.
So like people can argue like, who is it? Is it this one? Is it me? Is it that one? Whatever. Is it the person actually collecting? In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, is the people collecting the sheep and the goats? Do we collect sheep and goats now? But it's designed that you, in today's world, you can't do things for free. An example, the UK scenario again, 1,500 cases a month. We get about 300 to 400. They get 1,500. So you got a backlog of 6,000.
Yep.
You're not going to do that on the cheap or for free.
So basically what you're saying is that if this was a volunteering effort where everyone was not getting paid for it, it would fall apart.
So what we did is in the first 3 to 4 years, that's what we did.
Okay.
And we actually did advertise $1 for $1, 100% admin, right? So we were part of that particular school of thought or process. And then you realize this is not sustainable. To build this, to make this in an organization, a foundation that we're planning to do, you've got to get this right. And then we realize that even for us to say $1 for $1 a year is Islamically not correct. Because Allah has said to us, you're allowed to do this, so don't you go against what Allah has already given you to do.
Right.
So if Allah has given you any permission, why should you have an issue with it?
Right. So I think one contention, we'll talk about this in a bit more detail, one of the contentions out of the 8 categories is also like defining these categories, and books will actually specify, okay, the definition of this person is this. Obviously, because if there's 8 categories, it's intended for 8 categories. If someone ambiguously translates something to be very broad, then it's no longer those 8 categories could mean anything. Especially the second to last one. The seventh one. Yeah.
Most people don't even know there's an 8th one. What's even sabil?
Yes. So like with this one, so the explanation that you've given is, if I understood it correctly, is that we could cover some of the people that are sort of helping people calculate or preserve or to distribute the zakat, working on the zakat, and therefore for that organization to be sustainable, those people can get paid from the zakat money. What do you say to people that hold the view that this is intended for governors and for people that are appointed by the ruler? So I know that when I speak to a lot of Hanafi brothers and sisters, or I speak to, even in our school, when I was revising Akhsar, the Sheikh actually mentions that, okay, if an individual was to stand in his community and start collecting money, it is not allowed for him to take from it, even though he's working on it. It has to be appointed by a structure of governance, Islamic in nature. So does NZF here just say that, or we just take a different view, or how does NZF like navigate that? Because there's a lot of people that would hold that particular view.
So similarly, you can, in the 8 categories, we can spend the whole weekend just talking about the difference of opinion in the 8 categories. So similarly with the Amilin layer, you'll have the view, and we're not arguing. That's the beauty about fiqh, right? It's not about 100% this one's right, this one's wrong. So it's basically
it's
ijtihad and the interpretation in different times. Our religion is so beautiful that it's applicable at the end of time. So that's why you have some contemporary scholars, later scholars will say you can interpret these things in different ways. So you might not agree. You might agree with that person on that one, but you might disagree with the person on the interpretation. So like even when we do our Zakah masterclass, we have at the end of it, we call deep dive in the 8 categories, right? So we go to the ayah, the hadith, and if somebody's interested in deep diving in the different views and opinions of this. So there's no ways today or any time all people are going to agree on this. So having said, to talk about the brothers that has this view, alhamdulillah, Nobody's arguing your view. I can't argue your fiqh view, but if you're sitting in the ring outside while the people are boxing, and you don't want to get involved, to say, okay, come and help this, come and give your free time.
Like, so on that argument, the boxing ring analogy, what if someone was to say, I don't need to be in the boxing ring to know something's right or wrong?
Okay, so according to them, in their mind, it's right or wrong. So Lakal Moon, everybody believes they're right. The global guys are right. Let's kill each other over this.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is that the fiqh is that's why there is room for people to agree and disagree.
Mm-hmm.
But let's agree and disagree with it respectfully. Right? So now if you don't agree with something that somebody does, nobody's forcing you to do anything. Now, having to say that it requires that, I'm not arguing that that's correct or not correct. I don't have enough knowledge to say that yes, it needs to have the person in charge, the Muslim, for you to give this category, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say we agree on that view. So in the meantime, when is it going to happen? 20 years from now? 30 years from now?
Or the agreement?
No, the person that's going to give us the authority to take
the
money, right?
ijtihad?
So in the meantime, stuff's happening. In the meantime, we need to distribute the zakah. In the meantime, we need to do something. So we come from that basis where the board that set up NZF and the sheikhs and stuff said that they follow the view that we can use this here. But what the scholars have done, besides the other 8 categories, so if you divide the 8 into 100, you get 12.5.
Yeah.
Right? So you can use 10% here, 50% here, or 30% here of your money. You can use 100% of your money here as an example, or in any of these categories, except this one.
Mm-hmm.
They said they restrict this to a maximum of 12.5% for any organization. That's the recommendation. You can get organizations to go over that because basically, according to that, you can. Now,
so
depending on the organization,
mm-hmm.
what are their policies on what percentage, if any, they choose to use here.
What's the NZF's policy?
So we don't use any of this unless we really have to. So if we have enough sadaqah money to look, the administration, the marketing, none of this is here. So we're talking about.
So if you imagine there's like another chart here, and that's sadaqah, and that's getting dipped into for a lot of admin, marketing, etc.
99.9%. And if we have to use something here, it's only for the people, the case workers working on the actual distribution of this account.
Okay, so would the recommendation then be, okay, if someone holds the view that, okay, 12.5 or 1/8, just to use fractions instead, is going to be going potentially, not in actual, but the maximum potential that your zakat will be used for the third category, and if you potentially disagree with that view, will the advice therefore be just give 12.5% more and you'll be safe?
That'll be fantastic. Or you will find probably very few places where people will agree to that. So the people might say, okay, 100% $1.
Yeah.
So ask the same brothers that's on the ground there,
yeah.
how they're getting paid, probably from sadaqah, right?
Yep.
Now, when they say, okay, we give you $1 for $1, that's fine, no problem. So the brother might say, okay, I'll rather give my money here. Or he might decide he'll do it himself.
Okay.
Right? So it's very hard to force people into an opinion. We're just trying to say, these are the rulings, my brothers. This is what we do. If you believe in what we do, you trust what we do, or any other organization for that matter, then leave it to them. This is not for us to argue. That's why we have so many differences of opinion or so many disputes amongst ourselves, because when it comes to some of these matters, we can argue this until the cows come home and then the poor and the needy is not taken care of.
Right, okay. So it's because I guess like practically what it means for, say, people that follow my school or a lot of Hanafis, etc., they just need to be conscious of this, that if you're giving it, then you need to understand that, okay, my school might differ with NZF on this issue, so I need to maybe talk to you or do something to sort of work around it, I guess.
So a lot of brothers, especially Ramadan,
like, can people come to you directly and say, okay,
all
like I hold the view that it needs to be in Sydney, can you make sure
100%.
this zakat money?
So I have people all the time. During Ramadan, we have some, because we know these things, and a lot of the brothers, they call up, so I have a specific phone number besides my personal number where people actually can call me for zakat questions, etc.
Okay.
So a lot of times the brother says, okay, tell me which madhab you're going to follow with my calculation. Then I say which madhab you would like, and it's 100% Hanafi all the time, because it's only the Hanafi brothers and sisters that asks that question.
Yeah, yeah.
And the beauty about it is Hanafi is the strictest in all of this, and we follow predominantly the Hanafi madhab in the determination of calculation.
Okay.
Right? So it's easy for us. It's easy for us.
So basically, it's like if someone does hold particular views, they can talk to you about it.
100%.
And I know personally and other people that have done this just to sort of get around some of these.
If they can help us improve or make us understand better or have a way of doing that, happy.
So you're inviting them into the boxing ring?
Into the boxing ring. Try and help us. Maybe boxing ring is not a good analogy, right? Maybe
it's a bit of a combative one.
Yeah.
So just to round off this last part before we move on this particular category, like obviously from the administrative cost is HR. Like I did a survey actually on my Instagram page about should people know how much people that work in charities or CEOs of charities, how much they earn. And I think if I recall correctly, about 2/3 roughly of people like, yeah, this is like transparency, next level, etc. But you don't need to tell me specifically, but like what are the types of salary packages you and your staff are on, like, and how does it compare to, like, because I know you've worked in the corporate world, how does pay here compare to government or the corporate world? So like how does that work?
So currently the problem we have with retaining staff or young ones that just come out of uni is that we don't pay enough for them to stay with us.
Okay.
And we hope to get a point where we can say we can compete with corporate pay. We pay for the lower admin type role. We pay definitely above minimum wage,
Okay.
but we do have an award, which is one of the categories of the Community Welfare Awards,
Okay.
and we've specifically chosen an award that we can stick to. So if the pay goes up, we have that award. So we pay people based on that particular award, based on their role.
Do you know roughly, like, say, if a graduate was coming out, what that award would roughly be today?
Not on the top of my head. What the
It's obviously above minimum wage.
Yeah, the hourly rate or the annual salary.
Either, if you remember.
So the hourly rate is basically, I think it's at the moment it's between $30 and $40 an hour.
Okay.
The annual salary for those roles are, I think it's about 70.
Okay.
But what we do is we have 20 staff, but 11 FTEs.
Yes, I understood.
So basically, they don't work all the time. They work 2-3 days. They work certain hours. So basically, they get paid hourly. So
they're part-time.
So they're part-time, part full-time, and that's because that's how they work. And for us, it works better like that. Not because financially, but it's just the way our workflow works. So it's hard to say like if a person is earning a salary, but most of the people, nobody's complained, and then we try to give them what we feel is something that is affordable within the budget and all of that, etc. So from a corporate point of view, I mean, I really don't like to talk about this, but I don't really mind if people, for instance, when it comes down to salaries, all of the people say that, yes, I'd like to know. So then I often go, okay, what's your salary?
Yep.
Right? And then they won't answer. Why is my salary important? Same reason, right? Not that we want to hide it, but it's just like people want to know. And then you get the reverse of that. We say, oh, they're paying him too much, because it's again like a marketing thing. People have different views and stuff like this. But yes, transparency and what people earn, all of that, we don't have any issues with any of that. And I don't want to talk about my personal thing, because if I come out of the corporate IT world, right? So people can
it'd be fair to assume that you took a back step salary-wise, obviously, because you're coming from a corporate IT role into a developing young organization. I think it was how many years old when you moved? I think it was like 7 years old.
NZF,
yeah. So you've actually made a net sacrifice to come across to do this role, and I think like
I wouldn't call it a sacrifice. I would say it was a choice. Yeah. It was one of those things that you just needed to sit down and make istikhara and say, look, I really need to do this, because if I want to talk to the people and say we want to take this organization to the next level, you need a leader at the helm all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the call I needed to make, right? And so the answer, yep. I mean, when it comes to money and stuff, I really don't want to talk about it. But it's definitely yes for those who are really going to worry about it, because I'm embarrassed to talk about it, because they might think, no, I'm getting paid. So no, it's not only one step back.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that. No.
And I think very briefly, because I want to move on to maybe some Hajj questions shortly. For people that are considering working for NZF or getting involved, like what's your pitch to them? I guess it's a good opportunity to.
You need to put up with me. It's a beautiful place to work, and our staff that's there, they can vouch for this. And not because I'm the boss or the CEO, and we don't have like sort of. There's a word that I banned in NZF is management. I banned the word management. So people can't refer to management. They can't say like management this or management that, because what it does, it creates sort of that aura or that group of people that's just doing stuff here. So we try to keep it as flat as possible in the sense of how we operate, but obviously in the sense of accountability, responsibility, we have a hierarchy, right? Buck stops at me, I'm accountable for everything, but then we have people that's responsible. But what we try to do is make sure that we're all in the same boat. So whatever happens on a given day, we're all in there. So like I dial into this daily stand-up in the morning, not because I'm supposed to be there or need to be there, just to check so people feel like, you know, I'm reachable, I can be in touch. I deal with cases. Like we are an organization that's 24/7, so to speak, but we don't expect our staff to work 24/7.
Yeah.
Only some of the senior guys and sisters work 24/7. Basically, on a weekend, I'll deal with it, or Asif or Munir, Sister Angela will deal with cases. Like, so every weekend I'm dealing with at least 1 or 2 cases. So I deal with the cases myself.
I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. Especially like if you're running your own business, or if you take this organization as your baby, you're not necessarily switching off 9 to 5.
No.
And like someone else, like when you're doing apples to apples comparison, and you're saying, okay, someone is in the corporate world is on this salary, and here they're getting paid less, but they're actually doing a lot more work. Then like I think that people start actually thinking and whatnot. Because like I can vouch, like I've spoken to a lot of people where they'll be like, man, I was having coffee and brunch at some cafe, and Ismail David was there getting the donation box, and you're just running around doing cases, and like Jazakallah khair for that. Like I think a lot of people can actually vouch for the fact that you're doing extreme hours. I know it takes a huge toll on you, maybe your family, your relationships, but yeah, Jazakallah khair for actually putting up with all that stuff.
I'm building a legacy and for my akhirah. So, and I'm trying to take as many people on the journey with me, right? And as an organization, we need, one of the things in our risk register is single point of failures, and I'm a single point of failure. And what is a succession planning? I don't want to be there in 5-10 years from now. I need to replace myself with somebody younger that's going to take it to the next 10-15 years. So that's how we think. That's what we want to do, right? And I don't want to be at a point where you get pushed out and say, you know, like, see you later, can you move on? No, it's let's succession plan, let's get somebody in there while you're there, so there's no this dispute of, oh, you know, they chuck the brother out, whatever.
Yes.
So that's how we think. Other roles that we have, that single points of failure, we're working on that. How do we make sure that there's, and the capacity building that we do in delivering the service is next level. So we plan, we strategize, we're working on a lot of stuff, you know, but it's not easy, and we're not in a hurry as well. We're not rushing for the sake of rushing. We know that we're building out something that, and I often say to people, how long has the Salvation Army been around for? 124 years, right?
Wow, I didn't know that.
Okay, 124 years. And their mission statement is, we will bring people to Jesus one at a time. Right?
Okay.
That's their mission statement. So we want to be here in 124 years from now, inshallah. And we want to make sure that we save people and we give those who are eligible for their zakat that you're right.
Right. So I guess one aspect of trust would be the financial trust, and I think we've sort of discussed a lot of those contentions that people may have. I think the second part, which I want to sort of talk upon before we get to the Hajj topic, is the Islamic trust. So, for example, like, so someone's asked the question here is, how can we trust NZ follows Islamic rulings? We know, basically what they're saying is that, okay, if the rulings of zakat are not followed, which we've sort of discussed, the zakat could be void. There have been criticisms of music in promotion videos and females appearing with makeup or even without hijab on the Real Talk show, which is the show that airs during Ramadan and sometimes around the year. So, like, what they're basically saying is, if you're lax on, say, music or females, like, how can we trust that you're coherent with your zakat?
Okay. So, firstly, we're not laxed on music or females or whatever. What we, in the Real Talk, so just take the Real Talk, so let's first start with the thing. So, when it comes to music and then makeup and everything, and then you cannot imagine how strict we are with this and how crazy we get when it slips through or somebody does a new marketing person or whatever. So, we're totally against that, to have music, or a nasheed is fine. So, we have, right? The other thing is that when it comes to the Real Talk, the reason it's called Real Talk is basically to take to not take our head out of the sand and say, guys, as a community in this country, we need to start living within what we need to address in this country. So Real Talk is trying to address some of these issues in a very nice conservative way as well, not like over here on the complete extreme side. So the very first time we had a sister on without hijab, was probably 3 years ago.
Okay.
You know how much the
Criticism?
meetings were, no meetings we had before we decided
Okay.
that. And then we had one of the people that's on with us, that was on with the same sister. He said, look, you are talking to a Muslim community that's diverse, that has all these types of people in the community.
Mhm.
So you can't like criticize or just show one side of the community. So if somebody wants to come on that has a view or whatever, then you need to like facilitate for that. So we thought about it. We said, okay, let's have a go at this. We got a lot of criticism for that, and we thought, okay, it's a good idea. It's again the guys outside the ring, you know, throwing the stones at the people and stuff like this. But maybe that person in itself will learn from that, and we have taught them, and maybe they'll put on the hijab from what they've learned, as an example, right? But
yeah.
having said that, we are very concerned. It's not taken lightly. If we put somebody on that doesn't hijab and stuff like this, there's a very, very good reason why we did that, or some reasoning behind that. Some just recently, I don't know, I won't mention it because we'll identify the person.
But like, I guess the counter, like, because I spoke to this person on the phone, I said, okay, what do you mean by this question, for example? So they were saying like the ends don't necessarily justify their means here, because the means are clear-cut wrong, and the ends are speculative, or the ends, or the gain out of it can be achieved through other means. So
Agreed.
it's not like a necessity, it's not like a life or death
Agreed.
situation.
Agreed, 100%.
So like, so that's the specific point, and then the general point that they're making is, okay, if you guys are a bit shonky here, how can I know that you're not shonky with the zakat?
So we're not shonky there. We are, a lot of effort and determination goes into what we do there.
Mm-hmm.
And we normally earn the side of caution. If we have an alternative, we do that. So there's every now and then when we have a discussion, the things, and there's different views, or people say, okay, like, so I can't always have my view and stuff. And the brother's right. I'm not arguing. I'm just disagreeing with him or her, for that matter. If I prefer to stay within that framework. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we need to know, as an organization or as a people, we care for all the Muslims.
Okay.
Right? All the Muslims. We don't want people to feel that we're discriminating against them because they don't wear hijab, or they're not very religious, or they're not. So that's the dilemma we have in there. But as the brother said, the means doesn't justify the end. So you'll find that we are very conservative, and jazakallah khair, and we still consider that. So I wouldn't say we shonky there. I'm just saying that every now and then we may just relax the rules, and there might be a purpose in that. And you could say that, look, there's better ways of of doing that, and it's different of opinion at the time. We have a whole group of people that decide, and they say, okay, let's have a go at that, and we'll consider that. When it comes to Islamic rulings, Habibi, if we in this business, if we know we're going to be accountable to Allah for this, there's no room for even thinking shonkiness, or there's no room to even consider. You know how much sleep we lose over stuff. You know how much determination goes into things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why I say to anybody who's concerned, come to our office, come and see if you can help us improve.
Mm-hmm.
You can find ways of getting us to think a different way. You're most welcome. We nobody ever claims to be perfect, and we have a whole process called business improvement,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which we normally just jot down things about how we can improve things. As a matter of fact, that point we'll take onto our register tomorrow.
Okay.
To make sure that we'll talk in Ramadan, say, but you know, this is a view that some people hold. What do you guys think? Da 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 da. And we consider those things. We consider the feedback.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, and I know, like, I think from speaking to you, again, you're not someone to shy away from taking issues on head on. So okay, so I know we probably touched upon this issue a few times, but this is probably the most recurring question. Okay? So do bear with me. So how does NZF cater for different fiqh views on various rulings so everyone's obligation is fulfilled? Who navigates? We've discussed this, and basically the question is asking, how do you avoid talfiq? So basically, like, taking something from this school and this school, but coming up with something that is incoherent internally, like, as in no scholar ever has said these set of rulings on rulings that are related. So like the brother Jazakallah Khair, he said that, okay, for example, like the Hanafi view might be taken on things like jewelry, or it might be taken on the issue of nisab and some of these other issues. But then, like, when it comes to linking the same nisab, which they define as for the fuqaha and for the masakin. The idea here is that the amount that you give them for their school, the Hanafi school, would be like, okay, it's the nisab itself. You can't give more than the nisab for that person. And because they will say that, okay, out of gold and silver, you go with what's less, the maximum you can give someone is 600 for silver, if we go for silver. Obviously, if we go for gold, it's 7. I know Dr. Suhail and there's some discussions about moving the nisab from like the gold and silver issue because it comes up in how much you can give to the person. I think it also comes up in Qurban season in terms of like who is wajib to do Qurban for. So like what they're saying is, how can you take a view from here to define something, and then when that same definition is needed somewhere else, you're going with a different view?
So we don't do that. So we as like me as the CEO or the end of the manager, we don't come up with any views, right?
Okay.
So this is not our view.
Yep.
So we have a variety, mashallah, of shuyukh and scholars that help us with these sorts of things. So we have Mufti Faraz in London, we have Sheikh Suhail. They're basically all very strong Hanafi based, right? So many of our rulings is very strong towards the strictest view of any of the rules here.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why we're happy to discuss the Hanafi view of things, because it's generally the strictest, and we try to stay to where things are the safest, and the strictest, and we don't make up our own rules. So then we go back, if let's say there's a particular case, so like any ruling when it comes to a fatwa, you know, it's based on the place, the time, and the situation of that particular person asking that. So similarly here, when we have cases that doesn't fit into any of that, so it's maybe an exception that they need more than the nisab as an example, or whether you use the gold or the silver nisab as an example. Then we take the responsibility is now for what we call our fiqh board, and we have people on that fiqh board. Man, they like if you take Sheikh Shajid Umar, he's got a PhD in law, Islamic law, right? So I mean, you don't want to argue with him. So we have those sheikhs. We have Sheikh Ismail, we have Sheikh Tawfiq. We speak to the Mufti here. So we take a combination of those things, and generally speaking, they all basically give you the same answer.
So okay, let's just say you went to these different sources. They overlap on, say, 80-90%, but then there's always going to be some stuff that they don't see eye to eye on. So like maybe for fi sabilillah, some of them will say, okay, you can go to the mosque. And a lot of more classically trained people will say, no, you can't go to a mosque. So then how do you like navigate those issues? Like, is there someone in NZF that sits above so like a
fiqh board?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So we'll go back to our fiqh board. So it's our organization, our responsibility.
And those are the scholars that you mentioned earlier?
Yes. So they will they'll give the final view on what they say, this is what you need to do. Okay. Now if I go against that, I'm taking responsibility on my own head, right?
Okay.
Like
which you don't do.
No.
Yeah.
Why would I be that crazy? Right? So so we have what you call sheikhs and people that have very strong views and very good knowledge about things.
Okay.
And generally, alhamdulillah, with these things, they always seem to agree. So we don't have a dispute about some of the bigger matters, or even the smaller matters. So we've never really had a place where we had to sit down and say, wow, that's now this sheikh is saying this way, this I said this way, and it falls in one of these categories that there's a big dispute on. It's not as hard as people think it is, right? It's just that sometimes when people want to misuse some of these categories, now you could say it's misused, or you could apply these categories to today's world. So in the last World Zakat Forum we had this. One of the sessions was, and Sheikh Shajid Umar did this on these 8 categories.
Okay.
Right, and he spoke about them, and he spoke about how the traditional, like the time of the Prophet, what is meant by these, how it's shifted over time, and how can it be applied in today, how can it be at different times, right?
But is that a resource that's available?
I'm not sure if I'll have a look.
Yeah, because I think that would be good, because like what I wanted to quickly do is go through some of these categories and ask specific questions. So for example, like how do you define someone poor or needy? Is it that they nisab? So if they're below,
so the poor, the needy is easy.
Okay.
The needy is also below the nisab, but there's the person that they might have a car, they might have a house, they might have kids in private school, but like the brother, he just lost his job, he's got no money, he's living from paycheck to paycheck, right? So he's hungry, he needs to feed. So this category is one of the biggest ones, right? The brother who needed an operation straight away, right?
Right.
You can become needy tomorrow.
That's right. Yeah. So I think as well, like some scholars base it on the nisab. I know in our school we say, okay, a poor person who has less than 50% of his needs, so rent and all those other things that you mentioned, and the needy is between 50 and 100. So there's that subtle difference. We've talked about the workers. Now this is another one. So for the people that to bring their hearts closer to Islam, what's NZF's official position on giving zakat to non-Muslims, for example?
We don't. So
Okay.
I met a brother the other day, and he, mashallah, his resume on his knowledge and his skills and stuff was like, and he blew me away with what they had. And we had this discussion, and we ended up here, and he said to me, do you know that from his knowledge and his understanding and the thesis here or whatever, this is only for non-Muslims? That's what he
Right.
told me.
So officially NZF doesn't give zakat to non-Muslims.
No.
Okay. Because yeah, exactly right. So like this is again one of those things. What about sadaqah?
Yes.
So NZF gives sadaqah to non-Muslims.
So we collect money 10 to 12, which is the interest money that people have in their accounts. So like, let's say you have money interest, mashallah, there's people with some big money and they can't get out of a way of getting interest.
Yeah.
They have to get rid of that, and we call it 10 to 12. So you can give it to us, and we generally park it. We use
What do you call it? Oh, 10 to
10
12.
to 12.
10 to 12.
Instead of calling it riba or interest, right? It's just a softer word for a haram thing,
Yes.
so to speak, right? So it doesn't feel like, you know. So we park that money, and we generally use it here for non-Muslims who come and
Yeah, because as you said, like, so like when I was looking at this, like I know a lot of the scholars that like in like Zad and other books, like the explanations will mention that for that one it needs to be a leader who has influence over his people, so like to decrease their harm or whatever. So like in Sirah, when it's used, it has a particular intended usage and whatnot. And I know
this
that
is also generally used for people who just embraced Islam,
right. Okay.
right? For those who
But
just like
is it that they've embraced Islam and they're poor, or is it just
yes,
because
yes. So they embraced Islam and they fall into two categories as an example, or they fall here,
yeah, okay,
right? So we have two boys now. Last week embraced Islam, both 16. They've been thrown out of the home,
okay,
right? So they fall here,
yep,
right?
okay, gotcha. Because as we said, like the yep, so that's fine. The other one that I wanted to ask you about was fir riqab, so the
Slavery,
fifth one.
free
Yes.
and free the slaves.
So I know a lot of scholars, they say that this extends to Muslim prisoners. So does NZF work with brothers and sisters that find themselves behind bars and them or their families need support, or
Yeah, so we have a program called Together Outside, which
Okay.
helps brothers when they come out of jail and the families while they're in jail. So we
Okay.
work with different organizations, partners that helps us with this program. All right, but we actually help them here or there.
because of that
So-
reason? Okay.
No, but we don't actually get it. So the free of the slave is basically, if you look at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, you know, the slaves. So today people say there are no slaves. Yes, there are. They might not be, in Australia might not have slaves by the definition we understand it, but worldwide there are people still in slavery. Like if a child gets trafficked for sex trafficking, or they basically slavery, right?
Mm-hmm.
So so in those categories, and those still exist. However, like for example, somebody gave an analogy the other day, which something that the scholars need to consider is in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when you freed a slave, you basically took somebody from being sort of, they used to have half the rights of a normal person, so to speak, right? A slave.
Right.
So if you free that slave, you took that person to being sort of a free and normal person, everything, whatever they have. So today, if you take an analogy today, say in Australia, the context of that would be if you take somebody on a bridging visa, or an asylum seeker on a whatever visa, temporary visa, they have no rights. They don't have Medicare, they can't do this, they can't do that. So basically they're not equal to the normal resident of Australia.
Right.
So if you help them, if they fall into these, but here as well, to get them to a normal person, to a normal thing, then you've taken them from there to there. So those are some of the discussions people are having. Our community is probably not ready for that type of thing. So we don't go down the path. We're very conservative in how we actually use the things. An example, even here, in the path of, is it this one?
Yep.
Reconcile heart. Where somebody you help, or in this one. Sorry. I'm just trying to think where my mind is. Fighting for the cause of Allah, fighting for the Deen. So this is always the true traditional, the jihad for that. So the scholars are saying like, today the jihad, the fighting is for different purposes, right? You know, fighting to protect Islam in Australia is an example. If somebody gets fired from work because they prayed or they're wearing hijab and stuff, like, can those things be used there? So this is the discussion they had at this particular forum.
Yes.
And
Because it's a contemporary
thing. Right?
Classically, like, it was very clearly understood.
So the scholars have not agreed. So you're going to have all of those is going to say, look, we need to stick with the tradition. You can't change this. There's other things, you know, today in life you can do. So there's no yes or no answer to any of that. But for us as NZF, we try to stay onto the most conservative side, so we don't get arguments or involved in this particular debate with the people.
Okay, and then I guess like the last part about zakat that I wanted to ask you about is between the categories. So I know that, for example, in our school it's preferred to give between, but it suffices if you give to one. I know the Shafi'is, they're like there's a much more stricter requirement to give between the different categories.
Yeah.
So how, like, if you were to break down percentages, say the last financial year or the last Hijri year, how has NZF divided the sums of zakat?
So it would be almost impossible if you say 12.5% across this, right? As an example,
Yeah,
if you said that would be ideal based on the fiqh of the thing. You
Well,
say
some would say equality between them. Some would say that at least some part goes to all of them. But obviously, some, like, it was still in our school at least, it still suffice if you give to one.
So the majority of money goes into this 3 year, which is the poor, needy, and those in debt.
So when you say majority, 70%?
70%, about 70% of this goes there. Then we have quite a bit here, we have quite a bit here, we have less than 5% there, and then in this category we have very little, right?
Okay.
If any, I need to
So
think,
like 2% or something like that?
Probably 1 or 2%.
And what just who are you funding in feasibility?
Because feasibility, just to come to that,
Yeah.
because people say that, you know, it's free, it's for everybody, and then feasibility is if Allah wanted it for just the white, Allah wouldn't put it inside this 8. So it's very restricted here. So when it comes to the feasibility, I just need to remember, probably this year we didn't do any, but I remember there was a case where it was definitely an issue of defending Islam from a, there was a court case.
Like from a physical perspective?
From
a legal perspective.
From the person itself, was his religion. I can't remember exactly, but that we I think we helped with very little money there.
Okay.
But we very seldom get here or here.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, perfect. So
They could argue that we have a problem because if we wanted to divide this evenly, then, you know, we should find this. But for instance, now contemporary in Australia, unlikely you're going to get much of this.
Yes.
Right.
So for everyone that can't see, he's pointing to slavery and feasibility. Yep. Okay. So that's the questions on zakat. Just a couple last questions on NZF, and then we'll switch over and we'll talk about Hajj. What work? Because I'm not sure if we'll be able to catch up again before Qurban season. So I'm trying to tie up those sort of questions here. What does NZF do during the Hijjah? What are the benefits of local Qurban? What's the view?
So again, the local Qurban versus local Fitr, all the same discussion. There are people here. For anybody who is not convinced, I invite you open-heartedly to come to any of our offices. Come and meet me personally, and I will show you. Take the names and stuff out. I can show you the data. I can show you. You can join our stand-up, and we can show you on every given day how much things we deal with, which is zakat eligible, right? So we wouldn't be doing this for the 10th year if we were wasting people's time or we're messing around, right? So when it comes to Fitr, when it comes to Qurban, so Qurban is what? The Qurban is basically, Prophet ﷺ said, for those who can afford it, and then they don't perform the Qurban, they're not allowed to pray Eid with him. That's a very strong hadith.
Right.
To say that if you can afford to do Qurban, you better do it, right? Right. So basically, the idea of Qurban is to celebrate with the Hujjaj, to celebrate the sacrificing of Ismail and Ishaq, with the Prophet Ibrahim, all of the Hajj things. So the Qurban comes down to, okay, once again, everybody needs to eat meat and celebrate in Eid. Right? So it doesn't mean people in Australia, why were we restricted? Is Australia such a beautiful, wonderful country that the third pillar of Islam is not needed here? Or Qurban is not needed here? There'll always be more people overseas that needs more meat than us. But that does not mean we don't need it and we don't have people that doesn't eat meat at all. So what we do is local Qurban. we try to upkeep the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, give you an opportunity to do it locally, and then we distribute that to our needy clients.
Do the donors share in the mix?
They can. So this is a very, very hard task for us, right? So you know the regulations in Australia when it comes to
Transportation?
look, it's just
Everything.
slaughtering,
Yeah.
you know, just the compliance issues. So if last year we went to one of the brothers' farms, right, and we tried, okay, like how can we give people more of the meat, right? And then, man, just watching the brothers slaughter, you know how long it takes, and then to clean it up, and then to cut a piece off, and then to deliver that piece to the person, and one wants a shoulder, one wants a leg, one up. It's just logistically,
It's very difficult.
you need to outsource this. So here it comes again. You need to outsource this to somebody who can do all of that. You provide a fantastic service, but it costs money to do.
Mm.
So that means the Qurban thing will cost more. So we'll say, look, a sheep in Africa is going to cost me $50. Why would I pay you $100? Right, in Australia. So you have all of this argument, this discussion. So
Because that's what I was going to ask you. So like, how much was your Qurban last year? How much did
I
it
think
cost?
it was 200 and something.
200?
Yeah.
So say that someone has 200, they could potentially do one Qurban here, or maybe 2 or 3 elsewhere. Why would they choose
The interesting thing was the Qurban, the meat in overseas was actually more expensive.
In some cases,
In
yes.
some cases,
I saw that,
because
yeah.
Australia is, alhamdulillah, when it comes to Qurban,
Abundance. Yeah.
the sheep are, but it's always that argument. What I'm saying to people, don't make it a them and us scenario.
Yep.
Don't always make it about why should I give you? I can give you more, right? So and I'll go to the masjid. I'll say to the brothers, okay. So I went to this new masjid the other day, fancy masala, payload. Okay, guys, how much rent are you paying here? Ooh, that's a bit pricey. How much does carpet cost? Ooh, how much does paint cost? Beautiful, right? So why did you guys do that? So they're all looking at me like really flabbergasted. I said, you shouldn't do this, brothers. You shouldn't do this. Because you know that with all of this money, let's say it was 50K that you're spending, yeah?
Probably
You're spending more, right? And 100,000 a year to maintain this masjid. You know how much mosque you can build in Africa for that?
Okay,
For that money?
so how would you engage with that line of argument?
I'm asking them. I'm asking
Okay,
them.
you ask them. Okay, yeah.
Why would you do this? Why are you wasting the money? Because you could build so many masjids in Africa for that. And they look at me and say, but we have to pray, brothers. We have to pray for this, man. This is our masjid. This is our local masjid.
Yep.
Same argument.
Right.
You can always do more somewhere else with the money. But there is a need and requirement for where you live. You know,
In that case, wouldn't the obvious thing to say be, like, just get less plush carpet,
No.
save money here and there,
Why?
and
Why? So like people say...
because it fulfill the need without necessarily
but
going
people
over.
say that. So people say, you know, I don't want to go for Hajj. I'd rather spend my money to give my money to Sadaqah or to some charity instead of going for Hajj. Because they show me that you've done that. Show me that you gave the 20,000 you were supposed to go on Hajj to a charity. Show me. Nobody can.
Right.
Everybody just say that's what they want to do, but they don't do it.
Mhm.
So why would you, if you can afford a plush carpet, to
Yep.
have a bodgy carpet or a shonky carpet, because you were going to send money overseas, which you didn't send anyway. So you remember
Right.
the Hadith Prophet ﷺ, Allah says Allah likes to see His blessings on the people.
Yep.
Right. So don't wear shoddy clothes or clothes because you want to be pious.
Mhm.
If you live in a country where you have the ability to have more comfortable things, do it.
Right.
But at the same time, let us, if we're helping our brothers and stuff like this, we are fortunate. So don't look at it in a way that, oh man, I'm unfortunate. Alhamdulillah. If you're fortunate, you have Prophet ﷺ said that for a man in the morning, if he wakes up, he's got to cover his head, he's got the food. It's like he's got the whole year, right? So look at that blessing and say, Alhamdulillah. And then don't always say, I can do better overseas. Yes, you can. You'll always find a place where there'll be more need for it.
Because again, so what I'm trying to say is that I think some people think in terms of like a need analysis. Like I know a lot of charities use these different.
So ask them in their house, have they done the same? The carpet in their lounge, or the 2 lounges they have,
Yeah.
right? Why didn't they build a smaller house and give it the money that would have done to charity? Same scenario. So don't be like.
Right. I get you.
Yeah.
Like,
So
I think
if you want to have this view,
Yeah.
alhamdulillah, don't disagree.
I get
with
that
it.
because obviously like that argument probably will just go down the line of 2 wrongs don't make a right, etc., etc. But so just to move on, we've only got 2 last questions about NZF now.
Okay.
So move away from Zakat. Then we'll swap seats to do the Hajj discussion. How is NZF structured globally? So from like a governance and compliance perspective, is it linked to say the other branches in the UK and Canada, etc., or is it overseen by Mercy Mission? Like, what's the ties to like Mercy Mission? So one of the brothers asked me, like, have the ties to particular individuals in Mercy Mission impacted NZF's perceptions in the community historically? So how is it structured, like from a global perspective?
So to start with, all NZFs, including Australia, is independent in itself. It's like my franchise almost. All the
Okay.
money, everything, the processes, the legal entities, everything around that is independent within Australia, and it stays there, and all the rules around that.
So you have the possibility to change it from NZF to something else or whatever?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So then there's the different countries, and then on top of it is NZF World.
Okay.
NZF World owns the IP and the logo and all of that. They own that.
Okay.
So I can't take NZF and make it my own.
Okay.
I can go and start another charity called whatever, but I
National
can't
South Africa
take.
Foundation.
Yeah, I can't take any of. It's all registered trademarks and everything like that.
Okay.
But no money moves anywhere amongst the NZFs.
So money from here doesn't go to the UK
No,
or vice versa?
doesn't go
Okay.
anywhere, right? And the benefit we get from NZF World is that a lot of the hard questions you ask is actually done at that level,
Okay.
right?
So it's standardized between
yeah, the
countries.
main muftis and all of them are all there, as an example. They will help us, and also the other benefit we get is how can we leverage off others NZF's work or what they do? Like, do we use the same CRM? Do we get a better license for the CRM, the IT staff?
Like more enterprise
yeah,
solutions.
like an example, we are now helping NZF UK,
Mhm.
all the other NZF, helping NZF UK to through that long time thing they have. We've got another meeting with them tomorrow. We've got a solution and some ideas. We're going to get that going. So that's basically the benefit we have of having our brothers and sisters overseas. That if we have a problem, that we can help each other. But it's very
Okay.
it's independent. That's how it's structured. So we have got NZF New Zealand. They're independent, but we as Australia is giving them a lot of support.
Okay.
Get them on their feet. So it's like a kid, you know, as they help them walk,
Yep,
and
yep,
then when
yep.
they walk on their own.
That's a good question. So this will be the last question on NZF before we talk about Hajj quickly. Is what are the future plans of NZF? Do you have more details around the partnership of like the UMA recent announcement and the expansion overseas, etc.? Like, what are the next, like, what's the 3-year strategy or what's coming up next?
So
for
the
NZF?
plan for us is NZF is to basically, as we said, build a foundation of the implementation of the pillar of Zakat.
Mhm.
It's like when you're building a masjid, you don't ask the guys what's your plan for the next 5 years, right? You basically say, okay, the masjid's built, people are going to come pray here and whatever, but we'll provide classes, we'll provide this. So we're building the foundation of the pillar of Zakat in Australia,
Mhm.
where people can confidently come and learn about Zakat, help calculate, we can collect Zakat and distribute Zakat. So there's a place where people can go over time. Next 20, 30 years, they know this is the Zakat pillar in Australia for the people.
Okay. Yeah.
In addition to that, we can't do it by ourselves. We need to work collaboratively with people already doing good work, with the other organizations, other charities. How can we do this as a collaborative?
Mhm.
And what are the things that you guys are doing? We don't duplicate what you do. And one of the things we don't want to duplicate. So we have partnerships with many different people who do different things, and then we provide an end-to-end service. So Zakat is not only about the financial well-being of a person, it's the physical, emotional, and financial well-being of a person.
Mhm.
So we provide mainly in the Zakat space the financial part, but we have referral parts to the emotional and physical well-being of that person.
So you have that network of partners.
We
so
build an
instead of-
entire ecosystem.
Instead of
of
doing it
partnerships.
yourself
Yep.
every single time
Yep.
for every single
And
project, you
we just have partners. We are working now on a very fascinating thing where we're going to talk, like if you take the analogy of Uber,
okay.
right? You like you want to go home now, you need a car, right? And the closest car will say, okay, I'll take you for that
Mhm.
price. We're working on a platform where we're looking at how can we make Zakat as a service, which means
Okay. P2P.
P2P. So a person, we have everybody signed up as Uber drivers or Zakat providers. Obviously, there'll be process around that. A person signs up, I need help. They're in Liverpool. So there's somebody in Liverpool that says, one of those providers see, oh, here's somebody in Liverpool who can help. They accept it and they help the
Okay.
person.
Gotcha.
Right.
So there's probably going to be a lot of like logistical and
yeah,
legal
so
and,
I mean, but that's where we think.
but yeah,
that's
that's
what we're
pretty
thinking,
cool.
right?
So to decentralize or to
Yeah. So we
democratize
provide the platform,
access.
we provide the process, we provide the compliance, we provide the know-how, and we help everybody. So that means people can get Zakat quickly, very
Okay.
quickly. And let's say nobody takes it. Obviously, there's a fall through that ends up somewhere,
Okay.
and we'll be the back end where if it all falls through all that particular process, it lands with us, our process is still in place like we do today, so the people are no worse off.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think what we'll do is, whoops, I just realized that the camera's fallen down.
Okay.
Do you want to just fix that? And we'll use this as a good transition to moving to the to the next topic and swapping seats. So we'll swap sides. Brother Ismail was very particular about the backgrounds. Bismillah. So just coming back to this. Okay, so this last part is pretty straightforward. I know I probably did your head in like I do with most charity people I talk to about Zakat, and I could talk about that all day. Hajj. So there's obviously been some changes in terms of the way that Australians access it. So previously they would go to an agent or an organization, a sheikh, and they would be their tour guide and they'll go as a group. So the first question would be, did the previous Hajj groups rip people off? Previously, I think the packages used to be like 10,000, and then most recently grew to like something 20,000, some even more. So like, did people get ripped off? What's your view on that?
No. So let me just state, I don't get involved in any finances, or I don't make any money from Hajj, or I don't have a Hajj business.
Yeah.
I'm just a guide, and I go and help people.
I think it's probably worth mentioning. How many times have you done Hajj?
No, I don't want to mention it.
Okay, you've done it many times. Many times. Okay. So Brother Ismail is very familiar with this. I should have also mentioned that he's also written a book on Hajj and Umrah, and he knows this area. So Zakat is one of his babies. I think Hajj would be his second. So $20,000 for Hajj seems excessive when I could go to Malaysia and come back and do a holiday for a couple of grand.
Once again,
why is it 20,000?
Once again, you can go for a holiday and then have a holiday, but Hajj is different, right?
Yep.
So I wrote an article probably about 4 years ago, 4 years ago now, that talks about the pricing of Hajj.
Yep.
And why Hajj costs so much, and why the pricing has never come down, and why it will never come down.
Okay.
Right. So I'll send you a link to that. It's an article on my Facebook page, and it basically shows you the structure of the costings of Hajj, and how one piece, just if you increase that by 5%, it just does that. So the Hajj have gone up. When I went to Hajj in 1989 the very first time, I paid $2,000.
Sorry, which year?
1989.
Okay. Yeah.
Paid $2,000. Everything, airfare, the whole works. Right. The Hajj today, which is 37 years ago later, is the average is going to cost you 22k to 25k.
Okay.
Right? Just in the week we got an ad. The Hajj in Indonesia is $22,000.
Okay. Wow.
So I'm not justifying.
So in Australian, that's probably like.
I'm not justifying the price.
Yep.
I pray and I wish it could have been much less. I'm not justifying the price, and I think it's excessive. And I talk about this all the time about how the only way to make it cheaper is if the Saudis, what's the word? Like in Australia, when they take it over, the government takes it over, and they what's the word? They put some rules around maximum things you can charge for it and stuff like that. Right?
Also price caps.
Price caps and stuff. So basically, they'll go in and say, look, guys, for Hajj, the hotels can't charge more than this.
Okay.
And
like a price guide or.
Price guide, and for Hajj itself, for the Hajj days, that it can't be more than this. So they need to say, okay, we want to make the Hajj affordable, and we want to start at this price and we work our way backwards. Okay. Right? But that is a dream, because in the Saudi mentality, or the way the people think that run the Hajj, they basically say, if you can't afford it, don't come.
Okay, so it's basically supply demand market forces.
It's the market force, a democratic way of doing things, the open market, so to speak, supply and demand, and there's always going to be demand. Look at last year. So last year,
how many people from Australia on average go?
So on average go for Hajj before COVID would be about 3,000 to 4,000.
Okay.
Right. And I have never met one person that I'm not saying this is true, but I haven't met anybody that was ripped off by any of the agents in Australia.
Okay.
Unless somebody maybe lost their money, whatever, but intentionally ripping people off now.
So like, as in, let's just say, just to sort of, before we talk about the new system, just talking about the old system. So I want to go to Hajj, I will approach someone like yourself or another group, and basically they will have a price. That includes a package of air flights, food, accommodation, etc., including services of being guided on what to do, when to do it, etc., buses, etc. So I guess the question is how much markup is there? So let's just say it's 20. Is it that it's costing 20? Or is there like it's costing 15 and...
I don't think there's such a big markup on it. So one of the things I intentionally, people might not believe me, but this is the truth. I intentionally don't get involved in the pricing of Hajj because I don't want to know.
Okay.
I didn't want to know how much they're making on per pilgrim or how much it's... But I've sort of inadvertently kind of got a vibe when people sell visas and stuff like this. But there hasn't been a big markup like people think. So let's say in the 22,000 cost of a Hajj package, my theory or the way from what I've seen is no more than $1,000 out of that 22 would be a profit to
like admin fees
and then that is also a risk factor for that agent, because if something goes wrong in Saudi, it always eats into that 1,000 or whatever, right? So they don't. Some make a lot of money, and the way the guys who made a lot of money in the past was those who sell the visas. So they get 400 visas. They'll sell each visa for 1,000, which has got no loss. So he sells 200 visas for $1,000 to some sub agent, and Khalas, he's made 200,000.
Okay, so he's become the distributor.
Yeah, for that. Yeah. But intentionally ripping people, overcharging people, nobody's been doing that. They've been trying to keep it down because you know that they won't sell it. So in last year, our package that we just had ready to roll out when they just turned the whole thing on us, our package was going to be $22,000. It's going to be a 3.5-4 week package, 5-star hotels, all meals included, guides and everything, right?
So end to end.
End to end. And people were saying, "Oh, that's so much." I want somebody that's been for Hajj last year that went on to even half of the package we were providing to tell me how much they paid. Nobody paid under 25. Nobody.
So let's talk about the new system. Yeah. So recently, as you mentioned, the Mutawif system was rolled out. Can you talk to me about what it was? How did it impact Hajj of Australians last year?
So somewhere in the wisdom decided that, okay, the British, Australians, Canadians and Americans, the agents are ripping people off. And they said, look, we want you to stop being ripped off. We're going to create this platform where you can go online like booking.com, you can go and book your thing and whatever, and then you can come for Hajj.
Okay.
Right? And that's what their plan was. And you don't pay anything, you pay everything for us, including airfares. And they put out the first package called the Gold Package, all flights and everything included. People got excited. Oh, you guys have been ripping us for years. We're going for 6,000, signed up, And as things progressed, you could see that this particular platform wasn't ready. They hadn't put any great thought into it. Logistically in Australia there was no flights, but they didn't tell anybody. So when you paid your 20k when it came out in the final package, you realized there was no flights included. You still had to pay, and the flights cost 6,000 at that point. So basically in the end you were just desperate and you just went, and it cost you like 26k.
So let's go through the process. I want to apply in that Mutawif system. Is it that I'm guaranteed a spot, or is it the lottery ticket?
So last year they basically pretended there was a lottery system. They said, did you go, didn't you go? Basically they just wanted to get interested, they want to get people's things. But they've scrapped all of this because they realized that these guys, there was just as shonky as you can get, right? They didn't provide the service. 4 people in the room, 3 people in the room. Yeah. So mahram, no mahram, all of that happened.
Let's talk about that. Yeah. So let's first park the financial stuff. So how much would it have cost last year for someone to go? Your estimate.
So my estimate, if you wanted a package, so just to estimate equal to what we would have provided, or on average, and from the people that have gone, that I've spoken to, my guess is about between 20 and 30,000. So the last brother that I spoke to, he took the platinum package. The platinum package
from the
direct things, right? And the platinum package at that time was 22k, right? They went from 6 to 22, right? And then he realized there's no flights included. So now he needed to get a flight. The cheapest flight you could get was 6,000.
Okay.
So he paid 28.
Okay. And were there any? So the flight was not included. Were there any other services once you got there that were not included?
Yeah. So basically, if you look at it, the fine print, it says there. You say you book for you and your wife, and then you book the platinum package, and you click pay whatever. And the last line, and I showed during my course, right at the bottom it says 3 share, triple shared. They didn't have twin share rooms in any of their packages.
Okay.
So triple shared means 3 people in a room. And I said to people, do you know what's going to happen? No, they can't do that. They'll never do that. What do you think happened? People used to walk into people's rooms at night while people were sleeping. None mahram. It was chaos. Our agent, our brother, the Saudi brother in Saudi that normally does our stuff, he, in the middle of all of this, he just put tools down and left. He said, I can't do this. I cannot do this to the programs, the guests of Allah. I'm out of here.
So people are rocking into a hotel room. There's people already in there,
Already
or
people in there.
they gone to sleep and someone else just walks
Yeah.
in. Sisters there, brothers there.
100%.
Okay.
And there's many stories of this.
Yeah,
People
because
call me from there, and
it was well documented. I think when it happened. Who was behind the change and
so
who
obviously
benefited from
there
this? I
was
guess.
so many complaints again. And the Ministry of Hajj eventually stepped in. The Ministry of Hajj said, okay, something that was obvious to them that they knew, or didn't know why it took them so long. They then cancelled these guys, brought their own people in to try and salvage the thing. They did some improvements, got people better hotels.
So whilst the Hajj was happening?
Yeah,
like
during Hajj.
During Hajj.
Right
okay.
in the middle of Hajj, they did all of this. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are getting some. If you complained, if you sent an online complaint about whatever you're unhappy with, you're getting some refunds now. So they're pushing
Okay,
out
so
some
there's
refunds.
something that people could do.
Yeah, so there's 3 brothers that I know got 3,000 riyals refund,
Okay.
and because they had complained about something. So I think what they're trying to do is get this PR exercise where they're getting some people who's complained to get them some refund.
Okay. Now there's talk of a new system coming through.
It's done. The new system is called
done?
Nusuk,
Nusuk, yeah.
and it's a similar concept. Same that you go online and you apply, and they once again promise that they'll include flights, but Australia is almost like a second thought for them. Oh yes, Australia, we don't have flights to Australia. There's no Saudi Airlines here. Then they realize, oh yeah, we need to sort this out. So basically, when we looked at this, they were promising that okay, what they'll do this year, the Nusuk, the app looks better. It's going to be better. Whatever, it's not have all these problems. And we will allow groups to apply as well. So they say
Okay.
like we can put our package there. We can allow groups to apply.
Is it a lottery system this year?
The lottery system is basically give us your name if you're interested to be able. So from Australia, there's never enough people.
Okay, so the quota we always
Quota,
are
yeah,
under the
we're
quota,
all below
okay.
that. So from Australia, it's not normally a problem unless they specifically say if you've been for Hajj before, you can't apply.
Okay.
But generally speaking, most people just say no, I haven't been, and they go through because they have no means of checking. So what happens is that you apply and then they realize, oh, flights is a problem. So now what we did was last week we tried to get our package, we got our package sorted. We're waiting for them to say yes, you can put it on the portal.
Okay.
And then we realized that there's no flights.
In the package.
No, there's no flights in the package, but there's no flights from Australia at the moment. So
For that window of time.
for that window of time. So
Okay.
if we wanted to, if they approved everything and we wanted to go now and say, okay guys, book with us, we have no flights. Emirates says we're not having any special flights for Hajj. We don't have a flight.
Is this when you're talking about us? You're talking about
Coming-
Sydney or all of
Australia. Coming
Okay.
out of Australia to any of those places is the problem now.
Okay.
Qatar is full. Malaysian Airlines flies very few, so they don't have seats. The only option we had last week was Singapore Airlines flying to Singapore, then into Malaysia, and then on to Saudi, right? And then now, if you want to do that, you need to lock it in. You need to say to Singapore Airlines,
Yes.
I need 100 seats, I need 200 seats, and they say, okay, give us the money. So it hasn't been agreed yet. If we took money from them, the Saudis are already saying, don't pay anybody any money. So they're saying, you need to pay and pay all to the Ministry of Hajj. Ministry of Hajj will then give back the money to
The airline?
the agency, right?
Okay.
The
Yeah,
agent,
okay.
right? So how's that going to work? The agency doesn't have enough money. They don't have the capacity to pay for all of these people.
Yeah.
And the chances of getting it back from the Ministry of Hajj at what point is like they could say, look, I don't know what's happened. So who would take that risk?
Okay.
Nobody would take that risk, right? So that's where we are today.
So as a group, you're not taking that risk.
We probably
you-
not. So the package is ready.
Yep.
If it
How
goes,
much is the package?
I don't know how much the package is, but the package is going to be probably around between 20 and 25. My
Okay.
guess, right?
Gotcha.
So let's say it's 22.
Yeah.
The package is ready. It can go up, but then there's no
And
flights.
sorry, that's 22 is excluding flights.
I'm not sure. I need to check
Okay. Yep. Sure.
because I really don't get involved in that. I don't want, but
Sure.
let's say it
So
doesn't.
someone needs to budget anywhere between 22 and
Yeah,
30
so,
potentially.
so let's say it doesn't include flights. The
Mm.
problem is then can we get the flights and who's going to pay for it? Because you're paying over a year.
yes.
Who's going to pay for that? So when we spoke to the Saudi guys last week, when the agency spoke to them, they were like, oh yeah, oh yes, oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh, now we understand. Can't you speak to the airline? It doesn't work like that. So it's almost like an afterthought of all of these logistic things. So what they've done with these systems is almost like saying like Hajj is basically an online booking system. Come do your Hajj and go. When we used to go for the Hajj and we have the people with us, we used to sometimes having to drag people out and force them to follow the manasik on those 6 days.
Yes,
It's tough.
Yeah.
Now, let alone going without anybody, most of the people will not do it properly because there's so much opportunity. And they tell you they'll have a guide.
So were there guides there?
The guide just sleep in the room, and I know this basically. The guide will just say, okay, yes, yalla, yalla, go there, yalla, go there.
Were the guides like, would they speak English, or like was there language barriers as well?
I don't know.
Okay.
Some of the brothers went, they want to try and help the people there to go, and I had a choice to say, should I go or not go, and I realized that going is just going to be a nightmare, and I know what's going to unfold. When I did my class, I said this is the worst case scenario class for you. I'm going to teach you what might happen to you, and 99% unfolded. So at least some people...
Oh, so you still did a class for last year's batch?
Yeah.
Yep.
And to show them how to perform the Hajj, what not to do, what to do. So I managed to help them from WhatsApp, and people called me all time of the night and stuff. And people did say, look, what you taught us really helped. Right? Example, I gave people example. So let's say you got yourself in this scenario of the mahram issue with the rooms. And there's 6 of you, 3 couples. You got only 2 rooms.
Okay, so just put all the females and males.
Yeah, so you got 3 choices now. 2 choices, sorry. You put all the you share, whatever, or you put all the females in one room. But you need to be conscious of this now. So guys, there's 6 of us. Let's make a decision here. Let's just sort this out, because these guys, I'm going to sort it out for you. So you say, okay, three women there, 3 men here. Everybody's happy. Okay? No, you're not happy. The wife, I need my husband. Oh, husband, I need my wife. So and quite a few couples did this. Said, okay, what's this option now? We've only got 2 rooms, but we need 3 rooms. There's 3 couples. Okay. Right? So if you stick with the 2 rooms, it's 3 ladies and 3 men. If you want to go for the 3rd room, now you need to buy another room from the hotel. So let's split the cost amongst the 6 of us for the 3rd room. Okay. And then we all have our own room. So each couple has 1 room. Yeah. Okay. So now later on we can talk about how we get our money back, whatever. So if you complain, you probably get some money back. If you didn't complain, alhamdulillah, it's basically people said, look, it's I just want to do the Hajj, right? Yes. Now, then doing the manasik of the Hajj, what the Saudis are missing in this part is they don't realize there's a whole spiritual guidance component to Hajj. It's not about booking, getting a hotel and getting there. It's about, okay, what are what you do during the 6 days? Who is the guide to take you to these 6 days? Mm-hmm. All of that. So that component is completely missing. Even if they help you, say to you, okay, we're going to give you a guide. It's again, language stuff, understanding, wanting to go with your sheikh as an example. Someone you're close with, familiar with, yeah. You know? So all of that will be missing. So over time, if this continues, basically Hajj will be very spiritually blank.
Yeah, so it's, at the moment it's atomized. So people are going, whatever they study from beforehand, they're just DIYing it, and they don't have necessarily...
So that means I need to adjust my course to have it like over 2 days and make sure this is the DIY course.
Hajj, yeah. So I guess to conclude this part of discussion around Hajj, would your advice be for people to postpone Hajj until there's changes?
Nah. So the problem is that the longer you postpone it, so I can't even say next year. Like last year, we said wait till this year. So
because I was going to ask you, when can we expect meaningful change?
I don't know. There's like with these sorts of things, and with those guys over there, there's never like logic in any of these things. And assuming that somebody cares about how you feel or spirituality, the cost, whatever, nobody cares.
Yeah, we'll talk about this
nobody
the other
cares,
night. Yeah.
Right? Nobody cares about how you feel, how much money you got. It's basically, you want to go for Hajj? Yallah, this is the demand. I've got the people, they can come. If you guys don't want to come, somebody else will come. And that's unfortunate. That's the way it is. So, many people are just desperate to go. And they're happy to take the pain. What we're going to try and do now is minimize that pain. So let's say this year Nusuk unfolds the same as last year, where we can't take you, or somebody from here can go with you. Please attend my class, because I will go through for you what is the worst case scenario that's going to happen to you, and how to perform your Hajj as a DIY.
Okay. Do you think it could get any worse? Or was last year like the bottom of the barrel?
I pray, I make dua it doesn't.
Khair. Just the last part. I know we've been going for a while. This is just the last part.
Do I talk too much?
No. To be honest, I don't want to cut you off midstream as well, and I think there's a lot of interconnected parts. Last part, so we've covered Zakat, we've covered the issue of Hajj, because I know a lot of people have questions around that as well. The last part is about your personal view on resource shortages in the community. So let's just take 2 quick examples. The first one I want to ask you about is, what are your views on Islamic schools? I know there was a question about public and private. I think you said private. Talk me through your view on schooling, what you did maybe with your own kids, what you'd advise for your grandchildren.
So fortunately with my kids, we didn't have these issues that people are facing today. So we are in a zone of war. We're in a battle of ideology. right? So for the public schools and the stuff that's going on with all of these things, and people are getting scared now. Look, is this what my kids are going to get taught in public school? They're trying to push it into private schools. So the only barrier we have is Islamic schools, right?
Mhm.
Or homeschooling.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we need to, obviously this is not going to change for a while. So we need to say 3 things we need to do. One, we need to find a way of strengthening those who are in public school, because not everybody is always going to afford to go to public school. What are the mechanisms to help people cope with this? What are the things that we need to teach parents? We need to have classes for the kids to make sure that they can understand and reason with it. It's not just this them and this us. These kids, you need to be able to reason with them and make them understand, the Islamic view on and how these things work. And then there's the homeschooling. Obviously, this is a big market for people now. And then there's the Islamic schools. So the Islamic schools, the issue I have with Islamic schools are they start off with an ethos. I'm in Islamic school, and we're going to get great. We're going to do
We're gonna be
this.
different to
We're going to be
everyone.
different. And then 4 or 5 years down the track, they're just as bad as everybody else. All about money, all about academic achievement. Where do I sit in the number of schools? Get rid of the kids in year 11, 12 who didn't perform. So they forget about the Islamic ethos and what they were trying to provide to those schools, right? So we as a community need to step up and say, guys, this is unacceptable. But they're running it as a business. So what we need to do is there's an independent Islamic school board or whatever thing. We need to go in there and say, guys, are you in Islamic school or not? So then we as a community should categorize these schools based on, is this academia only and Islam by name? Is this school really an Islamic school from ethos, Quran, all of that? So that's what we need to do as a community.
Can you give me an example of like where you've seen Islamic knowledge neglected?
I won't mention the schools.
Yeah, I'm avoiding names
but
as well.
you see the schools where the kids, they get to year 11, and if they didn't perform well in year 10, they get removed from the school because they need to take only the best kids to 11 and 12 so that their academic
School
rankings go up.
Yeah.
So how Islam is that? How Islamic is that in
Yeah.
itself? Then secondly, schools teach Arabic so that it looks like it's an Islamic school. Stop teaching Arabic. Why? It doesn't work. Half an hour a week in Arabic class, you're not going to learn. It's like saying English. Have you ever learned English? Is there only one lesson of English a week? No. There's like every day there's an hour of English because it's a language you're learning. Arabic has to be the same. If you want to teach Arabic, then make it part of a language that you're learning for the kids. But if you want to say that we're doing Arabic because I want to sound like an Islamic school, I want to make it feel like that, you're wasting people's time. The kids are not learning Arabic except kursiyun, chair, babun, do, all is a little bit of vocabulary here and there. But the parents feel, oh, my kids are learning Arabic. No, they're not learning Arabic. They're not learning the language, right? You can't learn Arabic half an hour a week. You just can't. It's impossible to learn a language like that. So rather take that time, make tajweed Quran or understanding the Quran from the Arabic words, whatever. So what we need to do is make like you want to make us accountable as an organization, let's make the Islamic schools accountable, the boards accountable for, are you an Islamic school? Let us as a community categorize them. Not let them categorize themselves. We find the feedback from the parents, we see what the school does, and we make people aware of that. So people choose to send them to the school that wants academia. Then don't complain. Don't complain when your kids come out from the school
So I think
they're not Islamically as you want them to be.
a large part of it is like I think unmet expectations. So I think marketing wise, it's one way. What you actually see is another way.
Yeah.
I think from my perspective, having sort of reviewed the schools in detail, at least from the information that's available publicly, the next step is to organize sit-downs like this with particular principals and executive principals to sort of talk through some of these contentions, similar to the way I've just asked you a ton of questions about zakat. What's your view on private homeschooling? Sorry.
So homeschooling, I've never done homeschooling, and I guess it's becoming sort of a necessity almost now,
Okay.
right? Because if your kids are going to school that really pushes this stuff so hard, and you can't afford the private school, you got to homeschool. Now, some parents can't homeschool because they need to go to work. And I think there's quite a few businesses that's stepping up where brothers and sisters are setting up this sort of in-between thing. It's a homeschooling environment. It's not a public school, private school. So I don't know, because I haven't personally been involved in homeschooling and homeschooling kids. I see a lot of people, the homeschooling kids are quite intelligent. You don't have to spend that amount of hours to do the same thing. So in public school or the school, you might spend 8 hours to do something. In homeschool, you probably spend 1 hour to do the same thing because of all the other activities. So then the kids are free. So yeah, I think homeschooling is a growth market, and I think it's going to be needed over the next few years.
Yeah, because I was speaking to Dr. Samir. I'll try to get him onto a podcast one time, inshallah, if he accepts. he was talking to me about how he delivered a paper because he's a lawyer, legal sort of academic based in Sydney University. He was delivering a paper just this week, I think, where he was telling me there's law reform that's coming now to remove religious exemptions from public schools, from Islamic schools and Christian schools or any religious school, that either the recruitment process or if they get rid of a teacher, if it's on the basis of LGBT leanings, then now there can be a legal case. So I think there's a lot of moving parts. So what that just means practically is if there's a teacher that applies for a job at your Islamic school and you go on their profile and you see that they've got all their different pronouns and all these other things, and you determine that, okay, for this employment, this person's not going to be a cultural fit or whatever, that's no longer a reason for you to discredit their application. Or likewise, that you've got a teacher there, they come out, for example, and now you want to maybe fire them, legally you won't be able to, and that's going to come at a federal level. So I know that a lot of Islamic schools have been like a fortress, like the last line of defense, but even they are starting to sort of succumb to changes in law and pressure.
So the problem is not only in Islamic schools, it's all the faith-based schools, right?
That's right.
So what we need to do is that, and I think Anik and stuff is working on some of these things, is basically working with other faith, like the Christians and the Catholics and all of that, to say, okay, how do we address this, right? So obviously we're in a battle, we have things coming our way. Now pushing back and running away from it is not going to help.
Mm-hmm.
What is the things that we need to now do as a community, as religious leaders? How do we manage this in an effective, correct way, right?
Yes.
Islam is, nothing can break it, right? But it can. There's certain things that affect our iman. So what vaccinations do we need to give ourselves, or what other things we need to now do in the madrasas, in the khutbahs, stuff like this, to talk and counteract all of these things in a very productive, good way, right?
Because when I was talking to Dr. Sami as well, what he was mentioning to me is that the horse has left the barn. Like it's already happened. We need to build up resilience.
Yes,
100%.
We can't run away now.
We can't insulate.
We can't insulate.
Yeah.
You can't run away and insulate. We got to say, okay, how do we manage this in a good way?
Yes.
It's a challenge in our society, like in the time of Lut, right? Yes. When these things came. Now, in our society, unfortunately, we're living through this challenge, but it's a challenge that, like, do you think the people that in the devastation in the poorer countries, they'd rather say, I'd rather deal with that, than deal with this. So each of us in our life have a challenge.
Yes.
So this challenge is for us is hard because of our children, but I think it's something because our deen protects us. Our religion has the answers. Don't be afraid that Islam is going to fall over and everybody's going to go crazy. No. Islam is strong enough, it will withstand all of this. We just need to be smart enough to how to tackle this. And we need to be on the same boat, same page, right? We don't have this, like these schools, like one's going this way, one is going that way. This is where now we need to stand together, right? And as you said, the horse is bolted. No point in saying we're putting up the fence and we're not letting anybody in, right?
Yes.
They're already inside.
Yes.
Okay, now how do we manage them inside?
Yes, that's right. So last question on Islamic schools. If I forced you to choose one for a grandchild or whatnot, from what you know currently, which school would you suggest?
Oh,
like I asked you about the charities at the beginning.
Yeah. So just before you go there, if you're gonna ask me a question, what is the need we have?
Yes.
In our community, right?
Okay.
So last week when I was at the Unifly thing, where the students were asking the high school students going to uni, what are the careers that Muslim kids should go and study, right? Is it engineering? Is it doctors? Is it gynecology? Is it physiotherapy? And they gave all of these things. I said, there's none of that. It is imams and sheikhs, sheikhas, sisters who study the deen. We need more of these people. In the last week, I had like 3 musallas asking me if I can get them help for a hafiz in the musalla or a sheikh to come and lead the prayer, right, in the musalla. The biggest problem we have is shortage of sheikhs. Even just today, if you want to call somebody now, you have a problem. You say, we have a fake dispute here now about whatever. Say, okay, let's call in some big guns.
Yes.
Right? I have 20 on my phone. You think we'll get anybody? No. Because they're busy with many other things, but we don't have access to them.
Yes.
Right? So we need the sheikhs to come, especially with the battle we're fighting now. So we have a battle, the war's on. We need to get our soldiers ready. The sheikhs are the leaders in this. Many of them are running away.
Why are they running away?
oh, this is not a good country to bring up my children. I need to go somewhere else because I need to first strengthen myself. Guys, when we're in the battle fighting, you can't say to the leader, I need to go and learn how to shoot, or I need to go and sharpen my sword. No, we're in the battle. You can't run away. We need you here to fight this battle with us. So this is what's happening. The sheikhs are running away. This one's too lazy. I say, come, can you come pray at Campbelltown? Come give a talk in Campbelltown. Habibi, it's too far. Too far. You drive to the city for dinner. Right? But Campbelltown to come and lead the prayer is too far. Right? Last night I was in Matraville. Same problem. Matraville, the guys can't get anybody. It's too far. So, I don't know. What are we going to do with the da'is, the sheikhs, the huffaz that think that's becoming lazy?
Right.
And it's too far
to do the things. Is it a shortage of resources or an inefficient allocation of resources?
It's a shortage of resources. It's people who want to comfort. It's people who want to go just down the road. It's too far to go out here. I don't know. It's just frustrating. I don't know what the answer is. I need to meet the brothers tonight to say, guys, I've mashallah, some of the brothers that I've called up, they said, look, we're happy to come out and I can give you a couple of weekdays, because weekends, whatever. So I've locked in at least 3 brothers to come and give a talk, at least during Ramadan. For the masala, the brothers asked me to help. And then now last night when I was out at the masala, the guys asked me for the same thing. I said, man, am I becoming the sort of I should start a business where I do consulting and recruitment of speakers and khatibs and stuff for the different masalas. But mashallah, the good news about that is that we have so many masalas and stuff everywhere. Alhamdulillah, that's good in a way. So that is also, if we don't support those masalas with good shuyukh or good scholars, it's part of this battle, right?
So you just before we go on, you're pro the fact that we need more masajid and like...
Not necessarily, but it's an inevitable thing, unfortunately.
Okay.
So, because you're not going to get unity, you're not going to get people all going to one mosque, right? If we don't have the place where there's only one Jumu'ah, because that's how it's meant to be. It's physically, from a space point of view, it's a problem. And secondly, just the way we live. We don't all live in like near the masjid, right? So when the people set up their different masajids, it's just to cater for that community, make it easy for them to go there, etc., etc. So that's just the nature of the beast, I guess.
Okay. Now, absolute last question. Obviously, you've been around the community for a long time. You've seen a lot of things. Like, what would be your advice to people that are thinking of getting involved in the community, da'wah carriers, maybe they're seeking knowledge, maybe they're going to be the next sheikhs that are going to come out? What should they focus their attention on? What's your advice?
Obviously, Islamic knowledge and understanding Islamic knowledge, and in a good way, not like you come with this extreme or this extreme. It's understanding the beauty of the Prophet ﷺ and how he dealt with everybody, and how the Sunnah is very, very easy to follow, and then learning how the Prophet dealt with different people, how he dealt with differences, and be a leader, right? The people need to lead, because the followers are looking for people. They're looking for examples. The kids are looking for people they can go up to. Lead by example. Be accessible, right? So you say to yourself, look, I'm going to be a leader. I'm going to learn how to be a leader, and use my knowledge to lead people, to guide people, to help the young ones. But I need to be accessible to them as well. No point in studying for 10 years, and when you come back, nobody can find you. Nobody can call you. Nobody can see you unless you're on YouTube or whatever, right? But calling you or trying to get to you, just ask you a question. The poor sister is trying to get some help for this and this. Nobody can find anybody. And I'm not saying that the brothers aren't busy with things, but there's got to be a mechanism where you got to feel that part of your role is accessibility.
Right.
You got to feel that part of my role is that I need to be accessible to people. I need to answer my phone, right? So if you have a phone, either say, this is my phone number if you need help from me. Then you say, give yourself a day or an hour a day. If this phone rings, it's somebody that needs help from me. And I spend my time with that as well, because that is part of your role as an imam or a sheikh or a da'i or a person who's learned, right? That's why, for me, as NZF, anybody can call me. My phone number is there. Anybody can call me anytime about anything. Complaint, feedback, case, whatever, call me. I'll deal with it. Because we need to be accessible if we provide a service, right? So...
All right, Jazakumullah khair. I think we've definitely increased the accessibility for your views through doing this podcast. Jazakumullah khair for your time. we'll probably just end it there. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Assalamu alaikum.